Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Hi everyone, welcome to a very special episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia and I'm here with a various slew of guests where we're going to be talking about the final season of the 2020 Disney Channel animated series, The Owl House. So the returning guest, I'm here with Arun Mehta from The Arun Mehta Show.
Hey everybody, and really just taking in like one of probably the best Disney animated shows that we've probably had, and I've been watching them since the 80s, so that's saying something.
Mm-hmm. And we have Jim Bevan. Welcome back, Jim.
Always glad to be back, especially since we're going to be talking about such an amazing show. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
All right. And we have back Morgan Terry. So welcome back, Morgan.
Thank you for having me again. Can't wait to discuss this stuff with you guys.
And finally, last but not least, we have the third Bill. So welcome back, Bill.
Booty hole theory confirmed. Thank you.
I believe you missed someone else, Patricia.
Did I now? Oh, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's the billing. I require an and. It's like Shatner in Star Trek. It's fine.
And we have our new guests who are going to be joining us. So we have these two amazing reactors. We have IAmZamber. So welcome, Zamber.
Hello, I love Owl House. It's the first show that made me want to get a tattoo.
Cool.
Tatted Squad, let's go!
And last but certainly not least, we have WeeLassReacts. So welcome.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
Okay, so the Owl House season 3, the final season of the series. So right before we go into all of that good stuff, as usual, I like to have my new guests come on in and discuss about how they first got introduced to the show. So Zamber, how did you first learn about the Owl House?
So Owl House is one of those ones that kind of came around the same announcement as like Miraculous Ladybug, Star. It was kind of getting hinted at, and I ended up just immediately falling in love with it. Like any witch girl, magical girl thing, I just eat that up. So learning about it, finding out about the voice cast, kind of falling in love with it, hearing that Alex was going to be in it as well, doing some goofy, funny voices. I was like, okay, I'm willing to give it a shot. And it was just love at first episode.
All right, and how about you, WeeLassReacts?
So for me, it was actually a gif of King that I saw, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he is adorable! What is he? Where do I find him?" And then I was looking at other shows to react to because I was very new to it at that time. I hadn't even really started my channel that much. I'd only done Stranger Things, and then of course when I found out about that, I was like, "I have to get on board with this." So here we are.
All right, and here we are. So I guess, go ahead.
Before we go any further, I think, we've talked about everybody who's here. Let's talk about someone who unfortunately isn't here, and that's Elijah. And as of this podcast, we recently learned that her grandmother recently passed away, and I thought maybe we should just, take a moment to mention, some good things about Elijah and, some of the great things that she's done during the time of the Owl House, because I'm sure she would have loved to have discussed all her time of here. And one of my favorite memories with Elijah is just every single Lumity reaction that she actually came up with, and saying that the gay panic is so real in Amity, and I didn't even kind of understand what she was hinting at until obviously I watched the the reaction, and so I followed her along with how she felt about it, because she was looking at it from obviously a lesbian perspective, and so she obviously had a better idea of like what the feelings were going through between Luz and Amity at the time, and so she was very educational in that regard. It wasn't just watching her for fun; it was watching her to like say, oh hey, this is that what it means to her as that, and so I feel like watching this with watching the episode afterwards and then hearing about how Elijah felt about it, I think was a really big thing, and so my heart goes out to her at this point, and because I think with that, she made the Owl House a lot more enjoyable, I think, when she was around. So
yeah, and I think in honor of that, I think we should give a moment of silence for her grandmother's passing. So if you guys don't mind,
Of course.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, well, let's get into it, guys. So 3 seasons of the Owl House. Each and every single episode was able to elevate every single time with its characters and its story. We were really sad when we first heard all the way back in season 1 that the last season of the Owl House was going to be cut to 3 45-minute specials because Disney felt that it didn't fit the brand. And so we knew that from the very beginning that a lot of things were going to be rushed. A lot of things were going to be cut. A lot of things that we wanted answers for were not going to be resolved. So let's go into each and every special and discuss about our further thoughts into it. So Thanks to Them, which was the very first one, and the plot synopsis was that taking place immediately after King's Tide, the Hex Squad was basically trying to get themselves acquainted over to the human realm and trying to figure out how they're going to be able to get back into the Boiling Isles. Halloween approaches, so they're able to figure out a way that they can be able to do it by finding a clue on the abandoned house. And we get little snippets of some backstory between Bellows and between the other Wittebane brother Caleb, and some other stuff that was happening around during the 1600s and taking place all around Halloween. So yeah, I'd like to know about what your further thoughts are of this special. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
So, thanks. Here's the thing about this, just to speak generally about season 3. I mean, unfortunately, these are the dice we're given, and we have to roll them. And so, what Dana and the crew did, I think they did under extraordinary pressured circumstances in regards to like trying to put this entire thing together. And hey, well, now on YouTube, you can actually see like the whole like 3 hours and 29 minutes of this whole thing. So it's like a Lord of the Rings movie, effectively. So like, I guess I think if I was told that Hey Arnold was going to get like a 3 hour and 29 minute like hyper special, I'd be like, good grief, I'm going to be watching that for like for days, pretty much. So I guess given there was even though it's a dark cloud, it does have a silver lining on it, and so Thanks to Them effectively basically puts the whole show on its head. It takes our favorite witches and puts them in the human world, and there's going to be some people say that, oh well, Amphibia did this first, but the thing of difference is with Amphibia compared to this is that I feel like Amphibia, some episodes in the human realm weren't not as enjoyable, I think, as probably seeing this special as in entirety. And yeah, I feel like the Owl House probably handled the witches in the human world better than it handled the planters in Amphibia, in my opinion. So because you got to see like them interacting with it. Gus is having a ball of a time trying to dude, finally he's been talking about the human world as the president of the human society, and then all of a sudden he's there. It's a big thing for him. Amity's coming more out of her shell at this point, and because now she's like in a completely different world, and she can basically be like her own person away from the pressure of her siblings and her overbearing mother and her dad who doesn't really pay all that much attention to her, and so she's got that freedom to kind of like blossom with Luz and like various other aspects of that. You get to see another aspect of V, which at the time we just thought was basically just creepy Luz when we started off with it, and then we're told there was no such thing, and then we've definitely been told now there definitely is no such thing, because she was adorable in her new form, I guess you could say. And so And then we got to go through Hunter. Hunter's going through an identity crisis, and this is more real, I think, than some people think. Some people say, "Oh, he's a clone character or anything like that." And I thought he was going to go for like the tropes of like, oh, he's going to adopt certain like obscure personality traits, and then by the end of it all, he gets killed off and everything like that. Which I'm glad is not the case, because how many times have we been through clone characters? Whether it's in Batman the animated series or whether it's in other shows where they have a clone character and he's there basically to do some like odd traits, and then after that he gets killed off, and it's just so sad at the very end. And I'm glad they didn't go down that road with Hunter. They did Hunter very well in that regard. So, and good grief, Camila. At the very beginning of the show, we didn't like all that much, and I was one of the very few people who defended it, because at the time we thought that she was a nurse, and given the fact that we had the COVID pandemic and all the crazy stuff that they were going through and all the deaths and everything like that, I totally sympathize with Camila not being able to spend as much time in Luz's life as probably that we would like her to be, and so I had that. And then we found out later on she was a vet, so obviously that was out of the window. But then they allowed Camila to build her own character effectively, that this entire time, like she's a lot like Luz, and we got to really appreciate the struggles that she went through and the struggles she was going through, and thanks to them, like she's trying to I have a theory about how on earth is it that she pulled off being a mother of six, like for all those couple of months. So it's anyway, we'll leave that until later on. But the fact that you got to see Camila be able to have that reconcile with Luz, the fact you go to see the other kids be able to have their own identity in this, where the side you have to basically dedicate episodes to them in order to kind of flesh them out. I think thanks to them, with all the elements and all the time constraints, I think came off very well, and a lot of people were very happy with it, including me.
All right. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I just want to say I do appreciate what they tried to do with the first special and condensing everything that all the ideas they wanted to have. But you do feel the points where it gets strained, like following up from what Arun said with Hunter and grappling with the Bellows possession. It definitely does feel a bit too rushed. Like I would have appreciated a couple episodes, like say post-infection, where you see like subtle signs of Bellows reasserting his influence, because from the start that Bellows is going to take control by the end. And I think it could have benefited more from just a couple episodes where we're seeing Hunter try to say, first deny the infection, and then when he's more aware of it, he's trying to actively resist it while still keeping it a secret.
Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting. I think that if we had gotten a full season 3, we probably would have gotten that.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I do think they did well with what they have. It was fun seeing, more development for V and for Camila, but I just still wish that we could have gotten something, just like a little mini series at least, because yes, with Amphibia, even if the episodes weren't that great with the planters in the human world, it was still fun seeing them interact with this completely different society. Fish out of water stories are always fun, especially when you get to tell two takes on it in the same series.
Right.
So.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think I always like to think of Thanks to Them as a bit of a warm-up, stretching before the marathon mad dash, because they do through all 3 episodes, details in every frame, as much story and little character moments throughout all these episodes. Like everything is just so crammed that I think that feeling of wanting a breath is a mutual feeling between audience and creative team. And you like it's hard because it's like I feel like this is the arc, the storyline that's easiest to condense. The idea of the human world and then gathering ourselves and returning. I think that's the easiest thing to condense, but it's still like the little pieces that I can try my best to mentally stretch out. Like Gus, at one point, he there's like the Crucible or some sort of witch hunt play that goes on at the Halloween festival, and he exposes that the man accusing you of witchcraft is the one up to evil and wrongdoings. And I'm like, that's the episode I wanted from Gus in the human world with his mirror earring thing that never came back because we didn't have time. I wanted him to be so fascinated with our world that he starts to see the weird way that we take in our history and like celebrating like essentially witch hunting. And I wanted to see them take in those parts of our history, like coming into Connecticut and seeing like the witch hunter histories and everything. Like I wanted to see their reaction to our crimes, just like how we've been reacting to Bellows and his, right, socially, and like that negative
That would have
impact.
been awkward.
Yeah,
That would
I
have been
think
very awkward.
I think it would have been so interesting to see all of that. And I feel like it got summed up in a quick bit in a play. And I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted, but longer with more breath. And I appreciate taking at least a time to acknowledge some of those things, because I like the scavenger hunt. I like the going to the museum. It's under new management. But I remember the first time watching it, I'm waiting for what's his name to show up and like destroy everything with the practice wand, and then just having to let that go to focus in on, yeah, this is about Camila, this is about Hunter, this is about Luz, and getting bits and pieces of, you know, let's address the giraffes at least, and let Gus and Willow and V, like let's let them all have fun, and Amity trying to figure out the human world library, and like it's nice to at least have those little nuggets.
Oh yeah,
pleasantry.
Amity doing that, Amity in the library. It reminds me so much of that scene from the one Star Trek movie where they go back to the 1980s and Scotty thinks every computer is voice activated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the witch hunter in the human realm is called Jacob, the guy who did own the cultures, and one thing I was thinking with him is that I thought, you know, we were going to go down the road of like, you know, he was going to be like one of like the people, the villains like Shadow Man, where like, you know, where Bellows is like pulling the strings and like getting to like do like all his evil stuff and trying to like, you know, thwart, you know, what the Hex Squad were doing, but you know, also we didn't have time for that, so yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share? All right. Well, I think that, yeah, I definitely do agree that there are some things that could have been done a little bit in terms of like developing more of the story. I mean, the only bit that we've ever gotten regarding about Caleb and Philip and the Widdabanes entering over to the Boiling Isles is with this special. So the whole hint about like, oh, you know, Caleb met up with Evelyn and they had a relationship, and it just turned out that Philip was really jealous. And, you know, the only things that we were able to get like hints of this was this and Hollow Mind. So they don't further develop this over time, but I think that for like keen eyes, they're able to put together that most likely that the Clawthorns and the Widdabanes were eventually like from the same family, which I actually called on this, by the way, all the way back in season 2A. I called that this was possibly going to be a thing because, as I mentioned before, where did Ida find the portal door? At her backyard. So I was thinking, okay, how did that get there? And then I just like put two and two together with the fact that Gwendolyn was the only person who knew about Philip Widdabane when Luce was told about the book in the library, and the fact that all the Clawthorns had bird palisman. And so that's the only thing that I was hoping to see more information of, like getting more in details with Masha, and maybe she would have like helped with, you know, more of the development, because I mean, we didn't even see in the end credits that her and V were a thing. So I would have liked to have seen more of that if given more opportunities. But but I would say that the highlight for me from that season is definitely with Camila and Luce. I just love the fact that we thought that you know, Camila was going to be really upset and that she was going to be really disappointed that, you know, Luce has been gone for months, because she thought that you know, she was like trying to run away from her, but in reality she was just really concerned because she didn't want her to go through the same you know, bullying and misunderstanding that, you know, she went through when she was younger, you know, being a huge fan of Cosmic Frontier and just being this gigantic closet nerd. And I just thought that flashback where, you know, all the other people were just like looking at Luce thinking her as weird, and then Camila was trying to defend her, and especially with the principal where she was told by him that Luce was not fitting in, not getting any friends, and he was the one who suggested that Luce goes over to the normal camp. That just hit me right there, saying, wow, like I can totally see why Camila did all of those things from the very beginning. And I just really thought that that talk that they had, especially when we go over to the next special for the future, I think that we definitely see where Camila was at that point and why she decided to do the things that she did, and why she was essentially one of the bit of one of the many pieces that Luce absolutely needed, so that she can be able to compose herself as to being the bright-eyed character that we saw from the first 2 seasons. Because in season 3, she's a shadow of her former self, depressed, drawn away from everybody, because she felt so guilty that she was the one responsible for everything happening. Philip gaining his powers, the Day of Unity, her friends being separated from their families, everything. So I'm glad that we were able to see that, come into fruition, at least the first bits of pieces of it. I'm really upset that we were never able to see what the videos that Luz has been sending to Camila through her phone this entire time. If maybe we would have gotten like maybe a scene of that, like her watching through the videos and saying like, wow, my daughter really loves these people over at the Boiling Isle. She's thrived over here. I would have loved to have seen a scene where we got to see that. I mean, but
yeah,
I guess maybe
I really thought with the videos, I really thought that when she was filming them all, and obviously they weren't getting sent. I thought by the time she got back to the human realm, I thought maybe her and Camila would still be at odds with each other, and so then because obviously she's gone back to the human realm, and obviously her phone signal's gone back. I thought maybe it would then send all the videos, and then when she's like, obviously they have the big scuffle and like they'll break up and everything like that,
Yeah.
and then Camila would then get her phone out and realize she looks through all these videos and she realized, oh wow, these people aren't so bad. But obviously then that would relegate the episode where she first discovers V and realizes that they're bad. So we already had an episode about that anyway.
Right.
So it wouldn't be. I don't think it would have been worth repeating the same thing again. I don't think.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Even if they'd done the videos in like a credit scene, like at the end credits, we got to see as the audience all the videos that had came through. I think that would have been a really creative way of just including them if they had the time. But I felt deprived of a Comic-Con episode. I know they all dressed up for Halloween in cosplay, but I feel like it would have been awesome if they'd gone with Camila to like an event like that, and maybe that's when we'd had a bit more of the chats about her opening up about her geekness as well. I would have loved something like that, but who knows what we would have missed if we'd had a season.
If you notice, I think they were hinting like all the episodes they would have done in season 3. Here's I'll argue this until they put me down in the ground. 5 seasons and a movie. That's what this should have been. 100 episodes at least. It should have got the same treatment as Hey Arnold, in my opinion. And so there would have been time to do the Comic-Con episode, the beach episode. We should have definitely had the beach episode. We should have had the episode where episodes dedicated to Hunter and dedicated to Gus. Experiencing the human world. There's definitely some some episodes to build the Huntlow relationship going along between Hunter and Willow. Build those along instead of having to rush it through to the second to last episode of the show. And so there was a lot of building that could have taken place in that time, and really all we did was get it in like Photoshop, photo albums, and various other things. Also, the date is the slice of life date, that Lumity date we should have had as well.
They could have done like they did. They could have done like they did with Gravity Falls and just had like supplemental short videos to go up on their YouTube channel. Remember where you remember when they did that? Dipper's with Dipper's exploration of the
yeah. More Owl House pellets, basically.
More or less, yeah.
They could have done that, I guess. Oh well.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share?
By the way, the other thing I want to bring up is that I always said that Luz's dad would still have some significant part in the show, and he does. And you may not notice it, but when Luz says that when her father passed away, that this is the worst week ever, and then she said, "Oh well, then my dad gave me this book, and it's the Good Witch Azura." If it wasn't for him leaving Luz that book, none of this would have ever happened. She never would have got the interest in the Good Witch Azura. So he plays a massive role in projecting Luz to this adventure.
That's true.
Effectively. So yeah.
Morgan, do you have anything to share about this?
When I think of thanks to them, I just think of just being emotionally wrecked the whole time, just because they started it off with sadness of like Luz, where it was like almost borderline like suicidal, the way she was speaking of like it'd be better if you never existed, but talking about herself. So like that hurt the audience. And then like in the middle, we got the bit with her father and how she came to the Good Witch Azura, and just seeing her and Camila trying to process their grief, which hurt. And then at the end, you have Flapjack. You're ending it off with more sorrow and tears. It's like, thanks to them, felt like such like an emotional gut punch. It was just like so many different parts of the that episode where you're just like questioning the meaning of life. Like, why am I watching this? I feel so upset right now. And I think that says a lot for the show writing, though, as to where like they can make you feel so many different emotions in a single episode, where you can go from laughing to, oh, we're dealing with grief now, to, oh, look, it's them in cute costumes. Like, I really liked thanks to them, and I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did, because we didn't have like any of the people still in the boiling aisles. We didn't get any cuts backs to them, so we didn't have any Ida, we didn't have any King, we didn't have any Rain. But it was very enjoyable, and I can never really complain about the pacing of the show just because of what Disney did to Dana. I feel like if she was given the time, she would have done so much with it, and I feel like given the circumstances, she was able to solve a lot of things and put a lot of lore in there to kind of tie it all together. It was like not even like a fifth of the time she was expecting to get to finish up the story, when they announced it was canceled. So it's just, I really liked thanks to them, even though, you know, it's emotionally destroying every single time. But yeah, I liked it. So
I'll safely say this: I was expecting Hunter to die in this episode. To be honest, or at least somewhere die in season 3.
Well,
so I mean,
he did for a minute.
Oh, he did for a minute, yeah. And but the fact that Flapjack, I wasn't expecting, to be honest with you.
No.
Like, you know, I thought that Flapjack was going to be like around long enough, and maybe we're probably going to get some like hints of like Evelyn, of like, you know, maybe them communicating like in some kind of like spiritual way or something like that, kind of like the same way that we saw in Legend of Korra, where, you know, Uncle Io communicates to Korra through like, you know, like some kind of spiritual like, you know, connection or something like that. I thought that was going to happen between maybe them and Hunter, maybe. I don't know, but
I
yeah.
knew that the Flapjack death was coming, but only because it was foreshadowed in Hollow Mind. If you watch Hollow Mind, when the Belos inside the mind pulls a bird out, he smashes it in front of Hunter's face. And so that's where I knew. I was hoping I'd be wrong, but that's how I knew it was coming.
Yeah,
there's a lot of foreshadowing on this, which we'll get to later.
Well, that and the fact that Belos rejected Albert despite the lack of juice that he needs to put in his eyes. Remember back in season 1 where he's just creepily eating Palisman? He wouldn't eat Albert, and then seeing that come back again with Flapjack, I thought he was going to ingest Flapjack. I thought there was going to be some sort of significance to the rejection of Albert and then the last resort of Flapjack. I thought it was going to be the conflict of, if by battling Belos, now that he can kind of reform from one last sip of that Palisman 5-hour energy, I thought that was going to be the big like interpersonal conflict, is, are we technically battling what's left of Flapjack, and that being the last bit of Hunter letting go. And instead they just went so brutally real, to the point where I really, in a morbid sense, appreciate that Flapjack doesn't, for lack of a better word, come back. I think that needs to be permanent, and given how well they tackle, amongst many other things, the topic of grief and loss and death, I really appreciate that lack of sugarcoating, where it's like, no, like we not to jump ahead, but like we grieve, we, you know, leave flowers, the tattoo. I think that's a much better honoring of the character, and then the characters surrounding Flapjack, to not just, you know, oh, there must have been some magic in that old silk hat we found, and we keep him gone. I really love what they ended up doing with that, because there's always that 2% of my brain that's like, is the Disney gonna show up and we click our heels together 3 times and suddenly everything's okay and we talk it out and we're all best buddies and Belos does community service from jail? Like, no, like, he did a really good job at balancing everything they wanted to talk about, in my opinion.
I definitely agree with that. It kind of transcended being just symbolism, and kind of moved itself forward to being this martyr of sorts that kind of helps carry us on, push us forward in the story, not just be like, oh, well, he's dead, like, cool, like, you get to live, some plot MacGuffin trope. It just became this beautiful symbol for all of these characters to carry them forward, and I just enjoyed that so much.
Yeah. You have any further thoughts about this, Zamber?
I would say I love that a lot of times in kind of Disney's more general programming, I won't say kids show, but general programming, they tend to, you know, make parents the joke or the bad guy. And I love that Mom wasn't. We got to see her struggle being a through unfortunate circumstances, becoming a single mom and having to manage parenting all herself, kind of embracing what our culture has now truly shifted towards, having that more, I hate to say it, but nerdy culture kind of come forward and people being okay with it, like having like the One Piece movie be out on the New York Strip and having that advertised. Like, I can't imagine that even like 10, 20 years ago, like that stuff just wasn't there. It wasn't mainstream. So kind of seeing this cultural shift, and I think they portrayed it very well, having mom kind of step more forward, embrace who she was, and allowing her daughter to also do that and understand that it's okay. It's not something to be ashamed of, whether it is through her own sexuality or just, you know, enjoying this book series enough that she wants to dress up as the character. I think it's very beautiful, and seeing her kind of grapple through those difficulties and learn to not only accept her daughter, but accept herself was a really beautiful plot point. And while I don't have a child of my own, I think they really made it relatable to anybody to understand kind of what a parent is struggling through. And I would say, even if a parent walked in the room or hopefully was watching it with their child, to be able to relate to that and understand that you can take an interest in what your child is interested in instead of just shunning it away. So I feel like they did such a good job with it.
Yeah.
I definitely want to see, after seeing Camila with Cosmic Frontier, I actually do want to see a spin-off where Camila actually goes to space.
That would, and everyone else is on her crew.
Yes. Absolutely. She's going to be the Captain Janeway of the series. Okay, so yeah, Moscow, you want to wrap us up with thanks to them?
Yeah, I just the only other thing I had to put in had already been mentioned, but the sequence where we got to find out about Bellis's past, how they put that into the show was so creative, because they could have just done it as a throwaway story, but they didn't. They did like this advanced puppeteer type show where we got to see Flapjack or Flapjack's descendant or whatever, and yeah, it was just really nice. I really liked it. Overall, really enjoyed the episode. I think pacing wise, I agree with everybody. It would have been nice to have those moments to breathe, those episodes that we were really missing, but I liked that they put a lot of the moments into the montage. I thought the montage was very beautiful as the opening, and obviously for me, I think this was actually the first time I'd ever seen a character come out as bisexual, and I myself am bisexual, so that was a huge moment as well for the show, so I really appreciated that too.
Absolutely. All right, so if we can wrap things up with thanks to them, let's go over to the second special, which is For the Future. So they were finally able to figure a way so they can be able to head back to the Boiling Isles, and thanks to the tiny bit of Titan's blood that was located over at the gravestone, they got over to the Boiling Isles. Everything is in pretty much disarray. People are turned into puppets thanks to the Collector. And the only little bit of survival that was around was some of the students over at Hexside gathering up together, led by Basha and led by somebody else, but we'll get to that later. So basically, it's just the gang just catching up with everything that happened over at the Boiling Isles since they left. And it's been months since that happened. So yeah, I think that if anybody wants to share about what their thoughts of this one is, go for it.
This episode is so important, and to put everything else aside, like, you know, the Collector and, you know, Basha being in charge of the school and, like, you know, the chaos and, like, you know, the everything like that, the most important scene in that entire show was the talk that Camila had with Luz, where, you know, Luz once again, you know, felt like she failed, and it's like, you know, she's blaming all herself, and Camila has to grab her and pull her down and say, look, you know, messing up is part of living. And then she goes through, like, you know, oh, I had my wisdom tooth removed before the day of my wedding. I cursed out your principal, like, on the first day. And, you know, and then also there's one bit which, you know, really hit home. And that was when she said, oh, I thought maybe moving to Gracefield to be, you know, moving your dad to that fancy hospital was going to get him better. And you all know how that turned out. And good grief, she blames herself for her own husband's death. Like, you know, like you know, even she has trait. This is why I say Camila is a lot like Luz, or Luz is a lot like her mother, because they each, you know, really overreact with that. Like, you know, I have a theory about, again, I'll say I'll go later on in the show about my theory about Manny, but you know, this episode was so important in the whole. If we had the whole season 3, I think the whole talk between Camila and Luz, that episode would have been the most important episode in that season, I think, and so. Yeah, and also, I mean, we had a bit of a deconstruction, I think, of Basha a little bit because, I mean, we see her as like, she's the typical, like, high school royalty, person. We kind of like had her down as that, but in fact, she's actually very insecure inside about a lot of things, and we saw that a little bits. We didn't get to see a lot of that in season 2, but we got to see like bits and pieces of that. Like, she's trying to make herself important, while Luz and Amity are talking about the fact that there might be a clue to how Luz can get back to the human realm, and so I mean that kind of gets kind of pushed aside. But actually, that's an interesting thing for the Basha character, that she feels so insecure, the fact that she's no longer the center of attention anymore, and Luz has kind of taken all that away from her. And she then, loses the one thing that she was, really happy about the most, and that was her Grudgeby team, and they all got taken away by the Collector. So I think, we discount Basha, I think, a little bit, but in actual fact, like, deep down, she is very vulnerable, and we see that in the last episode, pretty much as a bit of part of the montage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some really important things that come out in For the Future, I think. Besides Luz's dad, who then we get introduced to in the final episode.
Right.
So. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah. I think For the Future is very interesting, along with the last one, because, and I don't remember if it was Dana herself or Rebecca Rose, shout out to her on Twitter. But the Collector was not originally a part of the show. That came in once they kind of got the information that they were getting a reduced season 3. So kind of getting this story about the Collector and their whole chaotic background and finding out is just this child that wants to play games. This whole innocence was such an interesting plot line that they just kind of had to piece together in their story, and I find it very interesting because King kind of ends up getting a sacrifice to this child and just being a literal playmate while everyone else has to suffer, which I think is a humorous plot line, because I think many of us has probably experienced having to babysit a nephew, niece, what have you, and having to be like, no, like maybe we shouldn't like pop the doll's head off, like that's not fun. And it's like, nope, this is my game. These are the rules. And so it's that frustration of being like, no, like, please, just like, that's not how the game works. These are the rules. And it's like, no. So it was just super humorous and a very relatable, like, I'm so sorry, King. Like, you're doing your best, bud.
It is, but I mean, at the same time, the fact that this is like, a demigod that we're kind of like dealing with here, unfortunately, I mean, I can kind of understand why a lot of people start to kind of hate the Collector at the same time. And I get, look, I know it's a child. I know it's like, it's that whole debate about that whole thing. But the problem is that because they didn't give the Collector enough opportunity to kind of like, I mean, he did in certain areas, like, he hates being alone. And it looks like he is, someone who has basically been played his entire time, including with what happened with Bellows and everything like that. But at the same time, what doesn't translate through, I don't think, properly is the fact that he's had no moral authority figure in his life. And I think, that gets lost in translation, I think. And so the fact that they lost that aspect of the Collector in that part of the storytelling, I think, unfortunately, it makes the Collector character kind of suffer a little bit. Because then you've got a bunch of people who are going to be like, oh, yeah, the King's going to finally snap and he's going to blast him with his WAP power, like it's just, and then people, I was thinking that was going to be, I thought it was going to be like, the bury the light moment in Devil May Cry. Like, I thought that was going to be where we were going for with that. But, it didn't happen, thankfully, and I agree. Third Bill is just completely
Oh, he's gone.
No, he's not.
He's gone. But,
He's gone.
But a lot of people were expecting that. Thankfully, we didn't go down that route because, and thankfully, the Collector. Well, we'll talk about like in the final episode. He was able to be turned, but good grief. I mean, this episode is. I mean, it is a great episode. Don't get me wrong, because it has like the best things about it. But there are some bits where it's kind of like, well, unfortunately, it's rushed, and this bit, unfortunately, is rushed. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so Bill, as soon as you compose yourself, would you like to share with the rest of the class?
Because I was gonna say how back and forth I've gone with the Collector, because ironically I'm like, is this an adult inversing Luce who refuses to grow up and face reality and like needs a reality check, or is this a kid? Am I being unfair? And I'm like, grow up, child. Like that's the point of being a child, is you will grow up. And just the visual of like, you know what? Wait, like that just really got me. I'm sorry. Like just
I am the storm that is approaching.
exactly. It's the most like frustrating thing, and I still value what information we get about the collector in the final episode, but For the Future really kept tearing me, because until we made the distinction between the collector and their siblings, right? I almost said architects.
Archivist.
Archivist, thank you. Archivist. What am I doing?
I don't know.
Until we made that distinction, because of how they're revealed, right? I'm trying to jump between both pronouns, so I'm trying not to also confuse myself. He like, the pinky swear happens, and we see the big cloaked figure moment as the collector leaves the mirror prison. I thought we were implying the brief moment we got in Knock 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 It on Hootie's Door and the Owlbeast gets captured into memory. I thought that was the same entity, and we were all getting tricked. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't trust you, Phyllis. Like, this is a world of magic. Are you 20,000 years old? Are you messing with everyone? Are you the one guilty of the, for lack of a better word, like war crimes illustrated in the book, right? Should they meddle in our affairs? Like, we'll scorch the earth and burn the air. I forgot it. But I was waiting for more guilt from the collector until we got that distinction. And also, shout out to Andy Flexner, one of the, I hope I said their name right. One of the art directors posted all the portraits, like just on Twitter. You can see them directly as a post in the background, and I'm staring at them for a video. And I'm just like, oh, dang, you were totally tricked. Like, seeing the full story in the portraits. And I'm like, it's the Bellows portrait. Thank you for at least giving us something like they did in Hollow Mind. But I'm like, it's nobody's fault except for Disney. But I'm like, show me this. I want to see the pictures move. That's one of the reasons we're all here is, oh, cool. The drawings get to move and it's magic. And I appreciate giving us that story. I wish we had gotten it in For the Future to kind of prepare us for the collector's shift, because it's one of the most beautiful things. And getting that full picture as I'm looking back now for my own content, it's so wonderful to see this character, like you were saying, like comparing it to a child and like popping off dolls' heads and like, this is how I play my game. And then the introduction into like, hey, like it's time for these characters to implement what they've learned onto a new, for lack of a better word, antagonistic force, right? Someone who can be spoken to, someone whose mind can be changed. And seeing like the introduction of, here's our lessons, and then furthermore in Watching and Dreaming, here's our stories. Like, it's this hopeful impact on someone, us, metatextually, watching this show, because yeah, it is, kind of the while we talk so much about, especially with Camila, right, like the stress of parenting, hoping you're doing stuff right, it's also this feeling of impact, like someone taking the time to spell things out for anybody, but especially in this case, a child like the collector, and like illustrating the world and experiences, and like, hey, if you want people to play magic games with, you can't just run up to them and scream at them, especially after putting their whole family in a dollhouse, essentially. Like, it did such a great job at maneuvering through that like Twilight Zone episode with like the little girl that turns everyone into toys, or it's a little boy that turns everyone into toys if he's like angry with them, so everyone's like kind of tiptoeing around him. It was that brought to a full scope and fruition of, hey, like, you representing the future have this limitless potential and impact. You could grow up to be a doctor, a politician. You could lead the next generation of storytelling. Like, your future is endless. Let's make sure that like these foundational things are implemented, while also, because of the magic of it all, solidifying that it's never too late for someone to learn if they're receptive. And I love seeing that in For the Future, because we get the color story, the color palette story. I don't shout out again to Rebecca Rose. She introduced me to that term in one of her videos, and I'm like, I want to pay attention to the choice of colors now. But in For the Future, we get the big, vibrant, like, it's like that artificial, like, cotton candy color almost all the time until we have grounded moments like Luce and Camila aren't speaking in a forest of cotton candy. They're surrounded by organic life, but also the color palette. And so I like seeing this artificial film that the collector leaves over everything where, no, let's preserve it. Nobody's going to change and nobody's going to run. I can control everything. I still maintain that the collector represents studio interference, but I think it's also a message for us to prepare us to take these lessons, appreciate the story, take the good, implement it into our lives, and prepare to move forward. I think there's something very beautiful about acknowledging those parts of us that want to control and like, no, these characters are my toys too. You know, I want these characters to kiss and I want these characters to not kiss. Like it's fun to see him kind of like meddle with the world and then learn to let that go and let the flaws and the faults and all that breathe, while also having the shooting star that definitely looks like the Disney logo when we get introduced to the collector's world, and all the bright colors, and there's something so artificial within everything while still maintaining something so relatable and human. I just wish we'd gotten so much of that information sooner. Like that was my thing with For the Future, where I like it more now that we have the full third season, where it's like taking that time at Hexside, like this is a world that still wants to fight back. They're not isolated in an apocalypse, but also showing us an anti-character with Basha. She just wants to hang out with her friends and play sports and get through school and have a life. And I'm like, that's also a valuable thing to fight for. You can fight selfishly in this situation. And I just wish we had gotten that information kind of moved around in a way to where I understood the collector as much as I understood Basha. Like does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
it does.
It was very bizarre, but then it made sense within the finale. But I loved seeing how For the Future takes that time to show us, even through Odalia, like, even no matter if you have a good parent, bad parent, like, or not parent, maybe environment, because I wouldn't call Odalia a parent, whatever your environment is, you still have a little bit of agency in it. And it's wonderful to see someone make that effort to show you your agency, show the collector what he is and isn't capable of. And I think there's something really special about taking that time to let them be a brat, let people be scared, and then seeing like Belos through Ray Ray feed into that insecurity and see how those things can manifest in so many different ways. And like I said, the impact an individual can potentially have. I appreciate For the Future a lot more now, and I already loved it when it aired initially, despite having to shut myself off from the internet for 2 weeks because it just leaked all over the place. But I feel myself finding more and more appreciation for the collector now that I have that full story. So my thing is always, I wish we had gotten those pieces sooner, the siblings and all that stuff. But the portraits were a great move to try to throw that at you as soon as possible. But yeah, that's always been my thing, is wishing we learned that stuff sooner.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Anybody else have anything to share about it? All right. So yeah, I think that one thing that I was really hoping that we got to see more information of was like how everybody reacted when the collector came in over during the Day of Unity. It's like, what was people's reactions when, you know, all these stars Kirby style were falling down and everybody was just being like panicking. It's like, is this what Emperor Belos was hoping that, you know, it was going to be? It was going to be like us just uniting together, but no, it just turned out to be a disaster. And people would turn into puppets. I mean, the thing that I just thought was hilarious, where Terra Snapdragon was dressed up as Ida so that they can play the Owl House. I thought that was actually pretty hilarious, considering that, yeah, I mean, after everything that Tara had done at that point, yeah, she kind of deserved it. And then, of course, the whole Odalia caretaker thing for the collector was also really hilarious. And for some reason, I have no idea whether the reason why both Owl House and Steven Universe just love pizza bagels. That's a question I don't know about, but I'm sure that maybe we'll get an answer to it eventually. But no, I'm serious. I think that I was actually really surprised of was they were able to help flesh out Bartholomew of all characters. Like, really? Bartholomew? I didn't think that he was going to be like capable of being anything other than just being like some jerk to Gus. But no, he actually was a capable leader who was able to come up with the ideas that, hey, everything that Basha and this supposed leader that is, taking care of all the students that Hexside was dealing with, that's saying like, no, all this stuff is you're doing is wrong. We need to have plans to ration food, ration water, make sure that the collector doesn't find us and all that kind of stuff. So that was actually pretty impressive.
I always like it when a joke character gets some time in the spotlight and they show that they're more than just what they've been stereotyped as.
Absolutely, for sure. I agree.
It's amazing he was even fitting in the first place, given the fact that, we're pretty much limited for time. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that another thing that was like pretty surprising was what you were saying earlier about the development for Basha. Like, we thought that, okay, she's going to be just your generic, bully that she's always been. But no, there's just actually a lot more to her that we see with her missing her friends and her missing playing Grudge Bee. And then when Amity comes back, she wants everything to try to be the closest inkling of things getting back to normal. But Amity says no, because she's already been way past it at this point in time. But then, of course...
By the way, there's one thing to note as well, is that when she does the whole abomination, that's a reference to, in the season 1 when she has... she no longer needs the construction glyph on her neck in order to basically make giant abomination, monsters.
That's right.
So, yeah, that was her, Anne Scoop moment, I guess. When...
Oh, wow, powers. Anyway, so yeah, I thought that was great considering that they hadn't been able to practice their magic in months. I mean, they literally just got back to the Boiling Isles.
Well, I mean, if you looked in, going back to the other episode, if you looked at Amity, I think she'd probably been playing with mud from the entire time, rather than having abomination magic. Maybe she'd probably just fused, plant magic with her abomination magic and able to make mud monsters and stuff. So I think she had an ability to still do it.
I guess that's true for sure. Yeah, and of course, we have to bring in the plot twist. It's like, oh, this is who was behind it the entire time, and it was Kikimora, because of course it was.
Of course it is.
And we are all amazed to see that Kikimora actually has a mouth.
I know, like, what?
I think that's what they were trying to go with in order to throw us off. But I looked at that and I thought, yeah, this looks too fishy. You ever seen in it kind of reminds me. It reminded me there's a character in the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, who reminded me of these goofy disguises that they all come up with in order to it's kind of like he's been doing to the days of Bugs Bunny, and I kind of looked at it and thought, yeah, something ain't right here.
Yeah. So Kikimora was essentially trying to pull off a Team Rocket, saying like, oh, I'm this character and I think that it should go this way, please believe me. But yeah, of course, this is basically her last attempt of trying to basically take over everything, because Bemper Bellows was pretty much just gone, and so the whole collector thing didn't exactly work into her favor. And so yeah, let's see if we can try to have that one last inkling that she was trying to do with all the episodes that we've seen in seasons 2 and a little bit of season 1, but not that much, but mostly with season 2, where she was trying to get into good graces with Emperor Bellows, and she was trying to see if she can be able to go rising up to the top. But every single chance, especially with the beginning of season 2B when Tara came along, it was just like her being demoted even lower and lower and lower. And so I think this was kind of like her last big attempt of trying to at least rule something, and yeah, that didn't turn out very well.
No, typical Kikimora, Kiki-Miki.
Yes, exactly. Well, anyway, so I think that's a highlight, of course, was with definitely with Luce and Camila. I mean, the fact that she was able to have that talk with Luce and saying about like, you know, the mistakes that we learn is how we are able to become better as people. I haven't heard a message like that since Lois had that talk with Ginger in As Told by Ginger's final episode, The Wedding Frame, in which when Lois tells Ginger about that, even though that she was nervous about, you know, the fact that she's getting remarried again, I mean, she has to take that step because, you know, it's something that we need to learn. I mean, it's how we change and it's how we grow as people. So I think that when Luce finally figured out what was causing all of her, for the most part, issues with her own self, about like wanting to be understood, and that was what caused her talisman to hatch, that just that one little inkling of that moment where she was able to get one major piece of the puzzle that she needed so that she can be able to heal herself back up, was really, really crucial. And then, of course, the whole theories about what's Luce's talisman going to be. Is it going to be a snake? Is it going to be an otter? Is it going to be an owl? Is it going to be whatever? And the answer is yes.
All of the above.
Called it. I freaking called it.
Yes, you did. Congratulations.
So
Yes.
it's basically a snake shifter. So it's,
Yes, a
it can
snake
be
shifter named-
whatever you want to be. Buy the toys.
Buy the toys.
If there were toys to, I'm sorry.
I know. If there were
The-
toys.
Yeah.
The Funko Pop Flocked limited edition Hot Topic exclusive line you could make of String Bean alone. Shout out to Kay. I need to find the username, but the person on Twitter who makes like mock-ups of Funko Pops
Oh, okay.
having a
Yes.
field day with string beans, and I'm just like, I wish these were real. I'd compulsively have to buy them. I need.
I
all
think the
these.
I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't the Mystery Shack weren't they selling string bean stuff at one point, or am I thinking about someone else? I can't remember.
I think
They
they have plenty.
currently have a mock-up string bean plushies coming out soon-ish. I think literally like 3 days ago they just posted a mock-up.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
There's another website called they used to be known as Homeworld Gallery, but they recently rebranded to The Bad Egg. And they have like pre-orders for I got my friend one of them. It's like a plushie you turn inside out. So at first it's an egg and then you turn it inside out and it's string bean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
I ordered it for her. It's not actually like they haven't been made yet or shipped out, but it was a pre-order that was happening like 2 months ago. So that website also sells like a lot of Owl House merch as well.
Patricia, when you edit this episode, can you just like put up a like gif of like Fry like putting out his money saying shut up and take my money?
Yes, I'm going to add it right here. Here you go, everybody. Enjoy.
Shut up and take my money.
It's
Okay. So, yeah, if
I'm so
anybody has
mad.
any further thoughts about this special, go for it.
I thought it was a bit of a love story to parents. I don't know if anybody else got that, but just everything from like Principal Bump kind of being the main, almost parent to all the kids that were in the school. When he got taken away, that place fell apart. And then, of course, you had Luce with her mother. You had the collector screaming out for some sort of parental guidance or parental figure or just family in general, to the fact that he got Odalia, which is the worst possible type of, it's not even a parent, I can't even call her that, it's just like a person who he thought could be the parent, calling her mama Odalia, and that is not what he needs. And he was screaming out, they were screaming out at the beginning of the episode for that kind of parental figure, where they were like, I want you to be Ida, I'm going to pretend to be Luce, I'm going to dress up and be this person, I want this type of life, I want to be surrounded by this family that loves me. And so I just felt like this whole episode for me felt like a love letter to parents and found family as well.
Well, look at Willow. Like, you know, she's trying to put on a front, but she's falling apart inside. And then it's to the point where she can barely control her magic. And then, like, Hunter has to, you know. By the way, now we learn that Hunter has Flapjack's powers and is able to like do magic himself when he wasn't able to do to begin with. And then, like, he was saying, "Oh no, this isn't your fault. Like, you know, you please let it out and tell me." And that also cements the Huntlow, you know. Relationship as well, and then Will just lets it all out and says, "I miss my dad," and she just starts crying, like, you know, you feel her.
I think as well that just proves the point of what happens to a child when they're forced to grow up too fast. I feel like that was an element of Willow's story, is that she was sort of taking on a lot of the burdens that a parental figure normally would in that kind of situation with everything going on. And so it was really nice actually having that moment with Camila where she tried to get Willow to open up, but she just wasn't quite ready at that point. But yeah.
I think in the Hex Squad, I think Willow was definitely deputy mom. I think at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
She's the mom friend.
Yeah, I mean, how far Willow had come since then, being like the awkward, shy, witch who wasn't able to be really good with abominations, basically just being like, I mean, I'm just gonna say this pun, a wallflower, and basically just like put into a corner compared to like everybody else. But in reality, she was just a late bloomer who didn't really have a chance to flourish until she was able to figure out who she really was. And the fact that she had to like have this new position of essentially being like the supporter and the team mom of the group, especially with Gus was like probably handling it at the worst because he's like a young kid. I mean, he's like barely 13 years old at this point. So the fact that he misses his dad and he's feeling alone. I mean, he even talked about this with Hunter later on in the special. So she had to be like the one to be strong for everybody, especially since she felt like Camila was the one who was taking too much of the responsibility, and so she wanted to be able to help herself out. But she's 14 years old. I mean, what she can't handle everything by herself.
Funny enough, she gets those traits from her dad because if you notice, like in the episode when Luz ends up having to work in the factory with Odalia and getting like blasted to bits with like weapons,
escaping expulsion.
Escaping expulsion, yeah. Like where you can see that one of her dads is like is sort of overbearing, really overprotective of Willow for obvious reasons. Like she realizes how powerful she actually is, but then she's got like a cool dad who like will look past the fact that she's sneaking out at night and stuff like that, and so she's she's got the experience of the authority, to basically be able to take control of certain situations, but also she can look past also other things as well, like and she gets that from her dad, which is great storytelling because that's how parents should be,
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and I'm sure another thing that a lot of people remember that was also like really heart-wrenching was you think that Emperor Bellos was going to take over Odalia. It's like, okay, here she is, ready for the taking, but no, Emperor Bellos takes over Rain, and everybody starts crying. It's like, oh no, Rain, precious cinnamon rolls.
we like Rain. I mean, Odalia, she's already. We don't care what happens to Odalia.
I know we don't care what happens to Odalia. I'm just thinking like, okay, we're going to have like twice the chaotic evil.
Yeah, there's no stakes if Odalia gets got. Yeah, I was
going to say, in retrospect, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, obviously when we get to the final episode, we'll talk about it paying off, but I don't know, like, I wasn't too much of a fan of the Rain possession all that much. Like, it's sort of unexpected, but at the same time, it's kind of like, really, like, I was expecting Odalia to be the one who gets, like, possessed and, like, starts toying with the Collector, and because, she's somehow managed to get into his good graces, so why wouldn't she be the one that would be possessed? I don't know, like, I really like to be in the writer's room to like hear the justifications of why Rain should be the one that gets into being possessed. I think I know the justification of
this because she betrayed her entire family just so she can get into good graces with Bellos. And the fact that Bellos wasn't even remotely thinking about having, her being the body, it's like, well, you lost everything. Good job. You played yourself.
Yep. You're too bitchy even for me.
Exactly.
Well, I also really like the way I keep saying Ray.
At this point in time, why not? Go ahead.
When Bellos is taken over Rain and is like, "Oh, hi, Collector. I'm magic. It's the power of your kindness that gives me life to tell you that King is gonna betray you." It's very like just deceptive, and it's giving free candy to a kid, or the weird reference, but right? Hi, Georgie, I'm Pennywise. You're Georgie. Now we're not strangers. It's that tactic to like lure children. It was something so eerie and unsettling. And then the voice actor Avi Roque
Avi Roque,
Roque. Thank you. I write everything phonetically so I don't mess it up, and then I don't have my notebook when it matters. Thank you. Getting that opportunity to do that performance, every time I sit there and go, no, I don't want Rain covered in boogers, I'm like, that's a great opportunity to have like evil Rain sounds. Like, good for them. But I think it's important because I think there's not many other characters without it being one of the main trio or Hex Squad or Camila. Like, the next character in line for this to have an impact would be Rain, because I've tried to think of like who would be better served. I'm like, maybe Darius if Hunter had to confront Bellows the second time through another potential parent figure, right? But I'm like, Rain just, I think, hits deepest where it ups the stakes, and then it gives us the opportunity to like essentially lose for a brief moment. As opposed to Odalia, that's a win. If Odalia gets covered in goop, floats with glowy eyes, and throws spiky booger arms with claws at people, that's just going to be more exciting when we defeat you. With Rain, it's like, oh, how do we do this? And now we have to sit on it for what, like 2.5, 3 months between For the Future and the finale. Like, how do you fan theory like flushing the boogers out and then killing them, as opposed to, I don't want Rain to be hurt, so how do I brace myself and wrap my mind around it? I think that was such a fun meta gift.
I was under the impression, well, my theory was, before we get into the final episode, was going to be that, Collector would slowly find out that, Rain is not what they seem to be. And so eventually Collector would either, or someone would find that out, or Lou basically, look, he's Bellows. And and then the Collector basically would like flush Bellows out of Rain. Although maybe that might be what happened. Like they play all the games and then realize Rain is not what they seem. So I thought it was going to go down that route, but obviously not.
Okay.
I think on the train of why Rain, I think it's important to remember that Rain has been fighting against Bellows since joining a coven. That was the whole fight between Rain and Ida. He was like, we're like, I am going to go join a coven now. Like, I'm not going to be wild magic like you anymore. Like, I'm fighting the system from the inside and taking this different approach to it, and slowly kind of catching on to what is going on with Bellows, and that everything is not what it seems, and trying to work around in there, as we've seen throughout the episodes, the rebels within. And I think it's important to kind of see that it's this silent fight that's happening, and having Rain then still confront Bellows, still fighting, even though Bellows is literally controlling Rain on the inside. It's this poetic justice of having Rain still fighting and them doing their best to stop Bellows from, destroying everything, and having this happy, wonderful life that Ida wanted for them, and causing their breakup. And that's why Rain still loves Ida, because Rain has been doing this for Ida since the start.
Right. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for in terms of Rain's development throughout what we saw, like literally at the beginning of Ida's Requiem all the way up until this point in time. All right, if I would like to say, Morgan and Moscow, if you have any further thoughts into this right before we go over to watching and dreaming, go for it.
Well, like, you guys pretty much touched on it all. Like, a big thing for me was the betrayal I felt during all of this, because there was just constant times where you thought something was going to happen and then something else happened. And like, writing wise, it was great, but emotionally we didn't appreciate it, especially with the Odalia thing. I was so upset. I was like, my worst enemy's about to die on screen. And then no, it's the sweetest cinnamon roll that gets I felt so betrayed by Dana and the writers. Like, I was about to send them my therapy bill. You don't understand. I was devastated. I felt like I lost a loved one. Okay, it was not. And then the betrayal with Kikimora, like, because I was like, okay, it's gonna do the Owl House thing. Like, she helped with the Collector, so it's gonna be like, oh, now Kikimora's gonna go good. No, that wasn't the case at all. And I felt like such an idiot for even entertaining the thought that 5-fingered gremlin could contribute anything positive to society ever. But it's like, you're gonna make me feel betrayed, but then you're also gonna put in like a beautiful message of like Luz's realization of, all I ever wanted was to be understood. And I feel like so many people in this community can get that, because at the end of the day, we're all either nerds or LGBT, or we've been, outcasts in some way, shape, or form, and we've all wanted to be understood. And just hearing that message, I think, struck a chord with a lot of us.
As far as Kikimora goes, that Oompa Loompa, he's drowning in a chocolate lake.
Amen.
The angry little kitten.
Chocolate's too good. Chocolate's too good. Just put her in like do a Joker and just drop her in some chemicals. Let her
Am I the only Kikimora sympathizer minus the final moments.
I guess you are.
Yes, I am. I felt like Kikimora until For the Future, which I think, again, it's indicative of this experience. I always felt like Kikimora was like indicative of someone who wants to climb a corporate ladder that's just rigged and capped. Like, I loved watching her continue to try and appease the CEO, for lack of a better word, of the Emperor's Coven, and like try your best to like position yourself to, like, she thinks she wants to be the next Golden Guard, not knowing what a Golden Guard actually is, and, you know, sacrificing family and like doing all this stuff and like taking the demotion, being promised a promotion. Like, I loved everything about Kikimora thematically. And then For the Future, I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess you just suck.
You're like, you ruined it. I had faith and you ruined it.
If we had more time, I'm sure there would have been more to it. But I like the idea of, okay, well, to continue the analogy, I've been in a bad workplace environment. I'm now gonna strive to be a controlling evil CEO to ruin my stupid analogy. But like,
I was going to say, because you know, mid season 2, I thought Hunter was basically going down the Zuko route, where like, you know, he like was trying his best to like please the Emperor, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, he would end up being outcasted, and then, you know, he would then go and try and like, you know, fight Belos himself, and then, you know, obviously Kikimora would like trying to stop him, like saying, no, this is, you know, this is my throne, like, you know, and like say I'm going to be only beats to the Emperor, and I thought we were going to go that route, but obviously we didn't. So
Yeah, well. All right, Moscow, round us up.
I think I've said most of my piece about this episode, to be honest. I think the love letter to the parents was the key one for me, but I just want to give Camila the shout out for some of the excellent lines in this episode, because she was hilarious. She had some great moments. Did anybody else also get caught out by the talisman becoming an orb? Was that just me? I thought it was like a planet. I was like, what is this? What's happening here?
I thought it was going to be like, you know, the talisman was just going to be like, you know, a whole, like, you know, a possibility, like, but then we got String Bean, which basically was the possibility, like, they can be anything. I thought that was what the orb was going to be, like, you know, it's just infinite power. I thought, oh wow, Luz has gone Super Saiyan, she's like the most powerful character now in the entire show.
That's
like,
next one. That's the next one. We'll get there.
Okay.
But yeah,
It's
I
an
mean, we
eldritch
already
beast
know
and you
that Dana is a
can't
huge
comprehend it.
Pokemon fan. And so seeing that egg, it reminded me of the Pokemon egg that we saw in Johto, where, you know, if you like, you know, ride it around and your bicycle for a few steps, and then afterwards it hatches, and then who's that Pokemon? It's Togepi.
I
So
love that.
yeah, as I said before in the Aaron and Patricia discussion, it's basically like if you took Dratini, Ditto, and Ekans and mix it all together, you have String Bean. So there you go.
Accurate.
Yeah. All right, now we can finally go over to our last special, which is Watching and Dreaming. So, unfortunately, the entire gang was captured by the Collector because of all the stuff that the Collector was fed by Rain. And so basically we have this wonderful scene where Luz is basically living her worst nightmare, where she sees herself as Emperor Belos, and she is basically put by everybody the blame of like being separated from the family and about everything that happened with Emperor Belos gaining power, the death of Flapjack and all that stuff. But it turned out to be a nightmare. She wakes herself up, she gets reunited with Ida and King, and then finally we have the final big climactic battle with them versus Emperor Belos. So share what you want to share.
I'm actually really glad this episode turned out the way that it did, because in my mind, I thought the final episode was going to be, you know, the Collector's going to like start like a Mortal Kombat tournament, and like, you know, all the witches are going to have to fight one another, and then the final will end up being like, you know, Luz having to fight Amity, and like, you know, so it all comes full circle from like, you know, the first fight that Luz ever had. Now she's gonna have to like beat Amity up, and you know that was gonna like, you know, tear her apart and stuff like that. But thankfully, it didn't go down that route. And what we ended up with was that, you know, Luz, each one of the characters all been caught in their own private hell, effectively. So, you know, I had Luz, you know, going through like, you know, her blaming herself for everything that happened to like all her friends, and then you got King being taken back to like, you know, the Titan trappers and being sacrificed on the altar, and then you got Ida obviously being told by her family that she's a threat to all of them and that she needs to be locked away and everything like that. And but then Collector makes a mistake, which is that Amity makes the comment of like, I challenge you to a witches battle. It's not a witches battle, it's a witches duel. And it was so clever how they did that to make figure out. And then when she did that, Amity snaps out of it. Like, she then thinks, oh, wait, hang on a second, what's going on? And then she tells Lou, so, what happens when you wake up from a bad dream? You turn on the light, and she hands her the light glyph. And I thought that was poetic, how they did all of that. And then she wakes up after that, and the whole collector plan effectively falls apart. So, we then get to the collector wanting to play his their games, and so we end up with all of that, and it's a nice montage of the collector finally being broken down and finally being effectively defeated, at their own game, accused of the pun, and then but this is a great thing about this, that this is the thing that was missing in the second episode, and that is that the collector finally explaining themselves about I ended up in this world because of those archivists, and they sent me to play with the Titans. Then all of a sudden they started disappearing, and then the King Titan blamed me for it and locked me away for thousands of years, and that's how we ended up with that. So the collector's never had a possibility to learn all of the stuff that makes you human effectively. I mean, gives you the ability to have a relationship with people. So they have that, which I thought that was a great touch, by the way, having all of that, explaining the Owl House and everything like that, and everything that Lou's learned. But obviously, in the midst of that, we have Rain fighting off Bellows, which was a really cool scene. I'm really glad that they said they portrayed that Rain as the most powerful of the what you call, which in a way kind of makes you wonder why Bellows would have taken over Rain in the first place. But that's just me. So we get that, and but then through Rain, Bellows learns that the Titan is the King is a Titan, and that's the most powerful thing. And then Bellows realizes that the very thing that he's been standing behind the entire time was the most powerful thing he could take over. And so obviously he goes and does that, done very well. And so just this whole episode, throughout that, I think was a great ride, and it does make you feel, bittersweet at the same time, because it's a great way to go out, but obviously we didn't get much of a goodbye, to kind of have to begin with, obviously because of the limitations that we have, and that's a theme that kind of goes out throughout this entire season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And getting to see, by the way, the Lou's death scene. I mean, the problem is that I saw Amphibia before I saw this, and so obviously, I thought this can't be the end, surely. But when we started seeing all the lights, and then we saw Camila start, in a puppet form crying because she realizes what happened, and that really does get you. But then obviously we get to see Luz go into the space between spaces and meet the most powerful being in all of life, which is Aaron Hansen of the other half of Game Grumps. But no, I'm joking. It's Titan's dad.
Yeah.
You know what? I still can't get over the fact that the Titan is the guy who plays him is the one who basically does Let's Plays with the lead singer of Ninja Sex Party. I can't get over that.
I mean, he's also the bell and the snatchback, the disco ball. Yeah, thank you. Very important character.
I'm wondering. I've been left wondering why they went for Aaron. Part of me wonders if, the crew was familiar with how everyone was joking that Adrian, the one Coven head, looked so much like Markiplier, and they decided, you know what? Okay, let's get a YouTuber for this big role just to mess with them.
Well, Aaron Hanson's really talented. I really wish he had bigger roles, to be honest with you. So I think he's really cool. And but yeah, so
experience, and also he's in the pilot too, isn't he? He has eyeballs.
Yeah,
the guy who ate his own eyes or whatever.
I just think there could have been there. I just think there might have been more obvious choices. I saw one person comment that based on the Father Titan's design, just the way he looked, they said he was just crying out to be voiced by Jack Black.
That
we got that with Bowser in the
a
Super Mario
budget
movie,
breaker.
so
That's
yeah.
that's contracts, but also that's a budget breaker to get Jack Black.
Yeah, if you remember the interview that Rebecca Rose did with both Dana and Matt, that there was they wanted to actually license out a song that would have happened during Kingstide. It was going to be like at that crucial moment where you have everything just falling apart when the Day of Unity goes into a disaster. But of course, during COVID, and they had to tighten up their belts, and basically they were just like saying nope. So I take it that maybe if a celebrity would have been possible to voice as the Father Titan, maybe, but I'm not sure.
Did they say what song that was?
But continuing on, I mean, like in regards to, you know, obviously we get Titan lose, which is like the coolest thing ever. Like I never expected that at all. I thought like, you know, oh, she's got the talisman already. I thought it was like she was controlling like the superpower and everything like that. But no, the fact that they added that on top of that and brought her back, and the fact that she can't come up with I love that. I feel like that's a reference to Hot Fuzz in a way, like when you know, where the villain's defeated and like Simon Pegg turns around and says, "I feel I should say something here," and then Nick Frost basically says, "No, you don't have to say anything." It's like, you know, that was that bit was great.
Yeah.
And but then we get like, you know, some really cool scenes, like, you know, they go all out, like, you know, on the fight scene of like fighting the Titan, and then we get to see I think is probably the coolest scene in like the entire episode, where, you know, Luz grabs, you know, Bellows and just pulls him out of the heart. So, like, you know, where there's some enemy cardiac arrest for you. But yeah, they do that. But then we get the next scene, which I think is really, really good. And you know, Bellows, you know, tries this one last ditch attempt to convince Luz, like, oh, hey, I'm free from the curse, and like, you know, I'm all right there. And she just stands there and just glares at him. And, you know, you could probably just look in her eyes, and you can just see all the thoughts going through her head. How many times she's been betrayed by this guy, how much hatred she has for this guy, like all the things that she's been through, the emotion, the trauma. Oh, that bit's just magic in itself, and just poetic to like just see that she's got nothing left to say to this guy. It's almost like the way that Doomslayer, like, you know, takes a look at his the creator. You know, he goes down and says, you know, have you got anything less to say to your creator? And he goes, no, and just stabs him in the middle. It's almost reminiscent of Doom Eternal in a way. And so, but here's the big thing that I want to add to this, and that is that you know, the bit when the clouds come in and the boiling rain comes down. I think Luz summoned that rain. I think that's you know, I don't think it just coincidentally just starts boiling rain when he tries to prove himself like he's human again, and then all of a sudden he just melts. You know, like, I just think, and also there's the bit where he says, you know, Luz, we're human, we're better than this, and she just steps away from him, you know, while grabbing him, like that one last ditch attempt, and then you get Ida, Rain, and King saying, oh, we ain't, and they just curb stomp him, like in Gears of War style. I wasn't expecting that. And then, yeah, and then then Rain turns around and says, you know, that was extremely satisfying. I refuse to believe that wasn't inspired by Gears of War and Halo 2. I believe that's a great ending to this villain. And one last thing as well before I shut up, and that is that, I mean, we, you know, trash Bellows for all the stuff that he is, but, you know, let's give him his due. He's a great villain. Like, you know, we want to hate this guy. He says, you know, the most terrible things. He has the most terrible beliefs. His justification is just so unsound in all of this. He is, but, you know, it comes from, like, you know, a big backstory of all this is the fact that, you know, Caleb got laid and, you know, got a witch pregnant. But, you know, like, it all comes from, like, all of that and just, you know, transpires into the whole villain story that we go here. That's great storytelling, in my opinion, when you have a villain that has, like, you know, a reason and a motivation behind it, and not just, wow, I'm just evil, you know? It's like, yeah, great. Yeah. Great way.
And I've seen a lot of people actually saying that this is like the antithesis of what we've been seeing in recent shows and movies about like the redeemable villain. It's like, you know, they're just gonna have like, I mean, even there was a joke about this with the Collector where he goes up to Bellows and saying like, all you need is kindness and forgiveness. And so you think, okay, this is like Steven Universe when he's going over to the Diamond saying, oh yeah, all the stuff that you've done with the genocide of all the planets that you've ever destroyed and basically controlling the gems and having them into like separate classes. It's like, no, I just forgive. That's not the point for those who are complaining about that. Stephen technically never like forgave the gems and the diamonds for everything that they've done. It's basically like trying to find a way of saying that, hey, in this situation, violence is not always the answer. But in this case, after everything that Bellows had done, hundreds upon hundreds of years of being bigoted and racist and just saying that witches were lower class compared to him because of his upbringing. And then finally, when, 50 years gone by and, anybody who was against him was petrified, or anybody that didn't stand in his way were locked up in the conformatorium because they were deemed weird or anything like that. It's like after everything that he has done to every single character that we've seen up until this point in time, yeah, he has his just desserts in terms of like, yeah, I'm sorry, there is no redeeming you, man. I mean, they've tried many times to have this guy redeemed. Lilith tried to talk to him, Luz tried to talk to him, Ida tried to talk to him, even his brother tried to talk to him. He would not budge. And even with King's dad basically saying that he's delusioned because he sees himself as the hero of his own story when in reality he's not. So we knew for sure that, yeah, there's no redeeming of this guy.
Well, I mean, like, when Caleb tried to talk him out for the first time, and he killed him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there was any coming back from that.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Anybody else want to share?
There's just so many amazing moments in this finale. I just think the idea of Bellows turning into a kaiju, that was very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. This fungal-looking kaiju that looks like a cross between Godzilla and the clickers from The Last of Us.
Yeah,
but he symbolizes that he's lost his humanity as well. Like, he says, "Oh, we're human, we're better than this," and he looks nothing like it. He just looks like a rotting corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah. See a little bit of the Lich from Adventure Time in there too, I think.
You're right. Yeah, there is a little bit of the Lich in there.
Yeah. Again, as Arun said, the scene where we think Luz is dead, it is a little emotional at first, but but considering we've seen Amphibia before, we know that it's not going to last, and it does lose a bit of the impact.
Mm-hmm.
But,
it would have been a ballsy move if they decided that Luz wasn't going to be alive at the end, and then everybody realizes how special she's been in their lives, and they just leave it at that. Like, that would have been interesting if
that would have been
that.
a Chrono Trigger moment in which Chrono was able to gather everybody from different time periods so that they can be able to stop off this evil giant creature thing that's been thriving into the earth for thousands of years. And then when he dies, you make the decision whether you want to revive him or you want him to stay dead. That would have been really interesting if they would have taken that direction.
Yeah. It would have been, but I do enjoy that she got her awesome moment, becoming Titan Luz, as people are calling her. There's one question that I just had recently concerning like the finale, when we get to revisit all the crew and we see everyone working to rebuild the Boiling Isles. You don't see among that group, you don't see Odalia or Adrian or Tara or Kiki Mora.
You do, actually.
Oh, you do?
Well,
yes.
You sort of do, but I think that's sort of clever how they kind of like keep them to the side. Like, that's sort of like, I'm still hanging on to the possibility that Disney might realize how much of a fuck up they basically made of this, and they might decide, okay, well, we're going to do some more Owl House now, and we're going to continue on where, Odalia is now the main threat, and like, all these other like, there's some people who just don't like change. And I think that's an important thing about this is like that, I still feel like we might get who knows, maybe we might even get, maybe it might be like, Luz and Amity's daughter, who we go on next. And like,
we're going to go into the shonen direction where we're going to focus on like the kid of the main protagonist that we've been following for 20 years.
Yeah, I just think there might be a possibility that, they're leaving open a possibility for a lot of things. Like, it's, I don't think this is the end for now. But I don't think, if Dana is still open to the idea of coming back and doing some more stuff, it's who knows? Like, it's we still might be in for a ride.
I must have just missed seeing him like during the final wrap up, because part of me was wondering if everyone who like did stay allied with Bellows or were to betray them, if they were in prison or if they'd ended up being executed for treason.
Well, we did see
I-
that Kikimora was in the background helping with construction of rebuilding all the old buildings that were pretty much crumbled. And then we saw Tara, Adrian, and another one of the Coven heads trying to see if they can like rebuild what the Emperor Bella's left behind. And then Darius and Eberwolf basically stopped them and saying, "Nope, we're not doing this again."
Okay, I must have just missed that then.
I mean, we were pretty much overwhelmed with all of the time skip moments.
Yeah, we didn't get in
Yeah.
the time skip. So like they're missing in the time skip, which I think they're leaving this open. I think like the same way they're leaving Amphibia open is like, oh hey, there's this whole new continent we need to explore. So they're leaving that open for the Amphibia coming back. I think they've done that on purpose, in my opinion.
I don't know why. My mind just went to this weird Boiling Isles version of the Nuremberg trials.
Wow, that would be really interesting if they did that. Here's the
in
thing:
the fan fiction, maybe.
We didn't see Odalia, so
Yeah.
possibly. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
Speaking of that, a lot of people were suggesting at the end they saw potential for an Alastor Darius ship now that he's free from Odalia. Do you see that happening?
I'm not against it, but I mean, I see them more as buddies, really, rather than like in a relationship. So I mean, like it's just because I like to think that maybe remember when we had the prequel episode where we had like Ida, talking about how she met Rain.
Then the Briggs kid, yeah.
Yeah, and you can notice that they're actually they're talking with one another, and so it looks like they were friends at the very beginning, and then something happened, and then all of a sudden, like they're not anymore. So like maybe in the future Owl House stuff, maybe it's going to be them like either rekindling their friendship or maybe more. I don't know. So
yeah.
Well, that's it. I think it's something people might be reading a bit too much into. I just know it's something that like a lot of the fans have. But for now, honestly, I think Alador might just be off of relationships after all he's been through.
I won't blame him, to be quite honest. I think he just needs to focus on being a father to his kids.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that if they are going to say, oh yeah, Alador and Darius are a thing, I wouldn't be against it. But again, we don't know yet. Anyway, anybody else have anything to share about this this final episode? All right, so I guess I'll say something. I think that personally for me, the way that they were able to try to tie everything together into like a 55-minute special. I mean, yes, there were some things that I would have loved to have seen happen. Like we never got any answers about the Bat Queen. Like who was the Bat Queen's owner right before she completely forgot about it. And also, I think another thing that I would have loved to have seen that happened around Ida's Requiem was all the witches that Ida, Rain, and the rest of the bats were able to, rescue and have them away from the Boiling Isles. Like I would have thought that maybe they would have came back in some way, shape, or form, but we never got to see that either.
I mean, in the final bit, during the credit scene, I mean, you saw some like newer witches that were there, so maybe they were them. Like,
I guess so, maybe. But again, I'm sure that we would have gotten.
If you remember, some of the witches that were getting rounded up in that episode actually were modeled off, some of the people who actually were working in the show.
That's true. You're right. Yeah, but I think that other than those things, I think that it was able to wrap itself up the best thing that it could. And I have to give it credit because there were a lot of great moments in that episode that just really stuck out. I mean, like the fight with, Luce and Bellows with the Titan form, and that final moment where, Bellows was finally defeated after just trying to save himself. And then, of course, you have everybody reuniting with each other. And that scene in which when we thought that Luce was dead and then Ida and King finally unleashed their full potential and their powers, that was an amazing moment. And the realization from the Collector saying life is not just a thing that you can just fix with a snap of a finger. Absolutely not. This is the lesson that the Collector needed to learn and needed to see firsthand, because I mean, we just saw earlier when they first talked to each other, it's like, oh, it's like a toy. If you just snap its head off, you can just easily replace it. It's like, no, that's not how things work. But I also really like the fact that Luce was able to talk to the Collector, talking about how, things weren't easy when, she first came into the Boiling Isles. She had a lot to learn, which is true. I mean, we saw from season 1, Luce, where she was a scatterbrain and just really naive and wanting to take everything that she can so she can be the ultimate witch. But that's not exactly how things work. It's all about working hard, and it's all about trying to learn everything that you can. And another thing that was really important that was emphasized once again, even from the first episode, even to this one, was choice. the choice about whether you wanted to go off and do this or learn this or whatever. It's like, you know, Ida even said there's no such thing as like the chosen one. If you wait around for it, you're never going to find it. It's your choice of whether you want to do this or not. And she chose to stay in the Boiling Isles. And then with the Titan saying like, you know, you can choose to take my powers and you can defeat Emperor Bellos once and for all. And she chose to do this. So this whole chosen one thing, or you're destined to do this, no, that has nothing to do with it whatsoever. You have this like 14-year-old dork who stumbled upon this magical world, and she could have just walked back if she wanted to, go over to the normal camp and try to, you know, basically be what society wants. But no, she chose to be much more than that. And I think that that is a really important lesson, because that is a major trope in a lot of fantasy stuff about like, you're destined to do this, or in your 16th birthday, you're meant to go on in this epic adventure and you need to head over to this land so you can reclaim your throne or whatever. So yeah, I'm glad that they was able to break away from the conventions that we've seen up until this point in time.
Moral of the story, don't go to summer camp.
Yeah, exactly. Don't go to summer camp. But yeah, I think that the way that everything was able to be wrapped up was actually like really, really sweet. And the fact that they were able to give Luz a quinceañera birthday celebration that she never got, which by the way, I called it. I called it. I knew this was going to happen. I knew she was going to get a quinceañera. Sure, it was like much later on, but you know what? I don't care. I called it. I'm happy that she got that celebration.
Yeah. By the way, the final scene where, you know, all the characters say goodbye to basically, well, the audience effectively, they kind of break the fourth wall in that, which I think was a very, you know, I really said, oh, hey, you know, I really they did a moment where like all the characters came together and like all took a bow and like, you know, with everybody, and because, you know, it's been such a great show.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Freakazoid moment in which they all came on stage and they sang that one last song because they knew that they weren't going to make any more episodes.
Yeah, so but as we all know, Dana doesn't like musicals, so we weren't going to get that.
That's true, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, you guys can share your thoughts. Go for it.
I think it was just nice to get that last, what was it, like 5 minutes or so of epilogue.
Yeah.
Just kind of allowing us to have that just enough closure to be okay to kind of walk away from the show, but still knowing that the characters are able to still grow, they're still learning, still having these adventures, while still reassuring the audience that they're okay, that, you know, Luz and Amity are still together, even with the fake out of like, oh, you haven't seen them in like so long. And it's like, nah, it's been like, we see them all the time. Like, it's just very lovely where I feel like there is a lot of shows where their ending kind of leaves everything open and there's a lot of mystery. While it's nice, but then kind of allows for the viewers to be like, well, what happened? Like, there's so much more I want to know. Where I feel like with Owl House, yes, I would love to still get like some graphic novels, maybe even like some mini series, what have you. But I can walk away from the show knowing that everybody's there. Everybody got a solid closure to them, that everyone's life is moving on. They're rebuilding and allowing for this lovely moment at the end to just literally, as you guys said, break the fourth wall to be like, we're good, bye, you can leave us now, like, go make more fun, go have adventures. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll go.
Yeah,
so I'm just appreciative of it.
When they were talking about like, you know, everyone's going to be like, you know, crying over a happy moment, I thought, I generally thought there was going to be a Lumity wedding. I really thought, like, you know,
yeah. And by the way, I'm so upset with you, Luz Batista. You hinted at that there was going to be like, oh, and everybody lives happily ever after the big wedding where there's music and colors and fireworks and all that stuff. I never got that. 0 out of 10.
Yeah. So...
No, I'm kidding. Shout out to you, Luz, if you're actually watching this.
I wonder if they didn't want to do that because they've been hearing a lot of like, there's definitely been a lot of noise of people, and I know that I'm one of the ones that hates it, of like Aero Ace and Aromantic people in the community that are like so annoyed and get so frustrated with how many of those shows do the time jump with the married with the happy kids and ever after. And it's like, there could be more to life than getting married and having kids. So I'm kind of glad they left it open enough where it's like, they're still together, they're clearly heading that way, but they've not just gone ahead and done that. I won't name the franchise that I'm thinking of in my head that is now cursed, but I'm sure we're thinking of it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I thought that's where we were heading with Lumity anyway, and well, there's other characters that didn't get married, thank goodness, they didn't romantically put Lilith and Hoodie together. I'm glad they didn't do that.
Oh my god, can you imagine?
Cursed.
Oh my god.
What's that about that Hoodie hole theory?
That's
a different kind of hootie hole.
I was about to say that I didn't want to
Lilith's
say it.
admiration for the Titan is translated to her admiration and connection to Hootie because Hootie is connected to the Titan. There you go.
There we
the
go.
Hootie hole theory part of
okay.
That's part of their relationship.
From the mouth.
Well, speaking to that too,
I'm a go.
I saw some people talk about wanting a wedding scene, or even I was joking around when watching it. I'm like, more kisses, please. I want to stay here forever. But then I kind of, because I've been going through my own thoughts to collect it for another video, and I'm like, Bill, at some point you're just asking for up. Like, you can't just get every single piece. And do you really want that? Do you want to see Luce and Amity just get older and older? Who dies first? I'm like, at some point, like you said, it's time to say goodbye, have our own stories. And I think that was the perfect way to do it, because I mean, I'm not Arrow nor Ace, and I too am tired of every meaningful relationship doesn't need to be romantic or familial, and that's something that Diablo House thrives on, even in this finale, right? That is showcasing and celebrating the connection of a found family. Luce got her chance to be connected with King and do spells with Ida. It really brings that whole messaging full circle in a big way. This does solidify their bond, their family, and I think they really go above and beyond to showcase all the different forms of not only relationships but happiness and the things to seek, wanting to be understood, wanting to be a support system, but also be a support system for yourself, like with Willow. I think they really do a fantastic job at illustrating realistic and varied wants. And I feel like they set up a nice, just like how they've given everybody who likes to cosplay thousands of potential possibilities to cosplay. It's also they set up the board really nicely for well, I like to think this happened and I like to think this happened. It really keeps everything nice and open for that final goodbye and that final bow. But I like seeing not only an ending of our heroes in a better place, standing at an exciting crossroads, or I guess instead of a crossroads, a field of possibilities, and feeling that joy. I really love celebrating not only the story in that way and the characters in that way, but also it's exciting for us, like I was saying earlier with the collector, our potential is limitless. Our future is so ideally open, or there's so many things you can do or try and explore. And I think it encapsulated as best it could, while there's so many details in every frame. They love these characters as much as we do. So let's try to get as many of them in there, and I think it's just a nice gesture to keep things loving, kind, and open. And the subtext is there if you want to dig for it. If you're someone like me, just the implication of Harpy Lilith, for example. Ida became Harpy Ida by accepting and coming to peace with the owl curse and embracing it as part of herself, and letting without getting the time to show you, Lilith had her own experience or version of that. It's right there to see it. Or if someone just likes to see the visual, oh boy, we finally got to see Harpy Lilith. It's satisfying for, I don't want to make this sound negative, but the surface level of, oh boy, the character design I've been wanting to see, and oh boy, a little bit of closure for a character I'm so invested in, if you want to dig that deep. And someone who jumbles back and forth between that, where I'm like, kisses please, and contextual illustration and knowledge and thematic, storytelling, I jump back between those so much that I felt so nourished and acknowledged on both sides of that spectrum for me. And I don't know, it's satisfying, it's pleasant, and like I said, it also keeps things so grounded, the fantasy and the reality that doesn't need to be separated, it needs to be balanced. One of the core themes of the Owl House, in my opinion at least. It's nice to see thriving in a combining of a world, getting to have the choices, seeing V and Luce graduate, seeing King finally get to play catch, like giving us as many little moments as possible to breathe as much life and give as much love out as they keep receiving in. I think that epilogue is like super important, and not putting it so stereotypically of like, and like you said, like they all live happily ever after the end, but also wanting to contribute to a conversation in storytelling. Because you mentioned it earlier, the comparisons to Steven Universe, which thank you for saying that, because nothing hurts more than having two shows I really like being bad taked and misinterpreted at the same time in the same sentence. But I feel like the Owl House ended that conversation, because we did get the communication and the forgiveness and the talk with a responsive antagonist with the Collector. And then when the Collector tries to implement it, here's the next lesson: is that's not always going to be realistic. That's not always going to happen. That's not always going to be presented. And it's not even like Bellows genuinely sought that out and no, you must pay for your crimes against humanity. He never even sought it out. And that solidifies the point. I feel like the Owl House, ended the concept of some villains are not redeemable. Some things are irredeemable. And I really appreciate the writing there to expand on that thought further, because like I said, like so many people still kind of misinterpret the point of Steven Universe, OG or future, because I'm having a hard time looking at those takes where I'm like, well, all that like it was just hugs, and I'm like, no, and like you get all that in the Owl House too, and they add to it, and it's like, yeah, like if Steven Universe was still going on now, like, and they had time and wanted to expand on these thoughts, they totally could. But here is the product of that kind of storytelling. Just like how we can all talk about how Steven Universe, Adventure Time, Gravity Falls branch down into a lot of the stories that we're ingesting currently or have ingested, right? Because I think they're basically all done from that tree. It's constant expansion, and this is the fruit of that seed, is to continue to expand on that concept and message and narrative. And I don't know, there's something, obviously I'm biased because I've done so many videos digging deep into all these things, but like there's something so enriching in that alone, and then taking that final acknowledgement to say goodbye, and seeing these characters have so much potential, and seeing the world rebuild. The school is in the heart of the Titan where Bellows died. The place for wild magic learning is literally on his grave. Like that's, or I guess his death site. There's just something so satisfying when you look for all those pieces, and I don't know, you just don't do that by accident. And I'm just, every time I've rewatched it, I've just been in constant awe of all the things that I did or didn't pick up the first time and picking up now, connecting threads to previous episodes. It's amazing what you can do with a short amount of time, and I'll always crave more while still being impressed with how much you got done, mad dashing, drowning in sweat, and bleeding from your shoes trying to get this marathon done in record time. Like it's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else want to share their thoughts of the final episode?
There was like so much in it where I could like go on for hours, but I won't put you people through that. But like a lot of what I liked is what has already been said, but like the whole concept of letting this show go is just heartbreaking. But what really like was the straw on the camel's back was that final scene when you think they're gonna say bye to the Collector, or they're gonna say farewell to the Collector, and then they hit you with a bye, and you realize it's you, the viewer, that they're saying goodbye to, and that hits you like an emotional freight train, and you didn't even know you were on the tracks. You didn't even know you were about to be emotionally wrecked and dragged for miles. But here we are. And just that scene, I think, like, broke all of us a little bit inside, because that's like the realization of it's over now. Like, they said goodbye, like we have to part with it now.
Well,
like,
it's over for now.
Yeah, for
I would
now.
say.
But I mean, I wouldn't blame Dana for not wanting to go through this crap again with Disney. But Rain and Ida and Lilith spinoff when they're kids would be great. Or, they even brought it up in the show. Like, that's a spinoff I'd watch.
The one thing I'll say about it is that I think, where Dana is now in regards to her relationship with Disney, obviously she's going to walk away for a bit. She's going to cool down. She's going to work on a couple of projects that she wants to do. And there's other things that she wants to do. She's very creative. The one thing I hope that she's going to do, and I doubt she's going to do it yet, but recently Illumination Studios announced that they're going to do Moonlight, which is their adult-orientated, animated movies that they want to do. I would love for Dana to walk in and basically do one of those projects. I think
if Nate Stevenson was able to transition from She-Ra over to Nimona and have a much more interesting take on that, then I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. I mean, even with like Mike Rianda, who was a writer on Gravity Falls, going over to Mitchell's versus the Machines, it's not impossible.
Yeah, I think hopefully Disney's going to get to the point where, I mean, let's look at their current lineup now. They've not got Gravity Falls anymore. They've not got Amphibia anymore. They've not got the Owl House. That was their 3 big shows, in my opinion, in the last 10 years that they've had. And what have they got at the minute? They've got Louder and Prouder, which kicked up a bit of a stink, but now not many people are talking about it. Molly McGee, which is like their somewhat most talked about show, but not really trending on any social media platforms all that well. You've got, you got Kif, which no one's really talking about at the moment. And then you've got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, which really only kind of picks up when episodes kind of come out every once in a week and then finally get dumped on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, their 2 big shows right now are ones that aren't really, matching the popularity of either of those 3 shows at the moment, and that's concerning, I think, for Disney Animation. And I think they're going to, they got Phineas and Ferb coming back, which they wrapped that up in a really good way, and they even fought to even get that finale into the episode, and now all of a sudden it's coming back for more episodes. I mean, what else could they potentially do with it? I mean, I do worry about it. And also, Disney Plus subscriptions are also falling through the floor at the minute for all sorts of reasons. Cost of living, people not really liking, Disney the way it's going at the moment, and, conservative, blah, blah, blah. But, there's all sorts of reasons why all that's going on. But, yeah, I mean, they're going to want to, they should be begging for Dana to come back soon. They really should. They should.
I'll be stating something about this a little later on, but
they should roll out the red carpet and say, hey, when are you going to start doing Owl House again? It's I think that's if they're not doing that somewhere down the line, when Dana's finally got a chance to breathe, then quite frankly, I think they're idiots. But, yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say, I definitely agree. I want to see Dana move on to new projects, and just show what other ideas she has kicking around. But I do want to see her return to this, if only just for one thing at the end. I just want to see the adventures of Sky Pirate Amity.
Absolutely, that'd be fantastic. I'm just hoping that we don't have to wait 15 to 20 years to do it, just like how we've had to wait all that time for Hey Arnold for the Jungle movie, or Invader Zim with Enter the Florpus, or Static Cling for Rocko's Modern Life. So yeah, I'm just hoping that won't be the case.
Mind you, the worst thing that could potentially happen is that Disney will turn around and say, oh, hey, we're going to bring the Owl House back, but all those live action movies you love so much.
No more of the live action, please. Nobody wants them.
Yeah. I genuinely would like to ask everybody, if they said we're going to bring back the Owl House, for a special, but it's going to be live action, would anyone touch it?
No. We've already gotten that with Kim Possible. I think we've had more than enough.
Oh, we don't talk about the Kim Possible. We don't talk about it.
I'm your Rufus now, Morgan.
No, we don't bring up that meme either.
A genuine one? Not like a bit where everyone just dresses up like their characters.
You mean like that joke that they did with Chowder, where you basically broke the fourth wall because they ran out of animation budget, and so they had to raise it back by doing a car wash?
Yeah, or Gravity Falls did it briefly. where there's just a shot of everyone in their, I think
Their
it was Dick Burton
costumes,
in their
yes.
costumes,
Yeah.
like they're cosplaying, going, "Ha! Like what happened?" Like,
Well, wasn't
Yeah.
that because they fell down the well of like infinite
yeah,
something or other? Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
It was-
there's a reason
it
behind
had to
that.
do with
so,
the magic behind it. Yeah,
Watch
yeah.
the spoilers. Watch the spoilers. Sorry.
Uh,
I'm
I'm
so
being
I'm
so
sorry.
vague.
Don't
I'm
worry.
not
being
remembering any of
I'm
this.
being so vague.
Okay.
Anyway, but there's something that I actually wanted to bring up, going into this topic, that, two things. The general consensus for, Disney's direction about like what kind of shows that they want to bring into their lineup. And there's been rumors going around that the Owl House is essentially like the beginning of the end of an era where, they're going to be focusing a lot less on story-driven shows and more on episodic shows. We've seen Kif, Primos is coming up, then Haley's on it. Then we have,
What's
Big City
the-
Green.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, what's the one with the yellow people? Yeah, Big City Greens. That's the
Yeah,
one.
Big
City
City
Greens,
Greens.
yeah.
Yeah, Big City Greens just wrapped up their 3rd season. They're gonna have a season 4, and they're gonna have a movie. So there's that, and also, like we were mentioning before, like Louder and Prouder and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur and all those other shows. So yeah, those are basically the ones that are going to be like taking over the Disney Channel at this point in time. But then I remembered looking through the Owl House Facebook page, which, by the way, it just reminded me of a Reddit post that I saw. Shout outs to Ian Clearly for pointing this out. They said that we have to remember that Disney Plus is going to try to lean more towards the story-driven and serious stuff that we loved seeing for Owl House and Gravity Falls and all that stuff. In
Good.
fact, in fact, if you remember, Molly Knox Ostertag is going to be working on an animated series for Disney Plus, and it's let me see if I can remember what the name of it was. I think it was
Well, so while you're doing that, I mean, like, I want to get everyone else's thoughts on this, and that is me
Neon
and Patricia.
Galaxy. That's what
Yeah.
it was. Neon
Me-
Galaxy.
Okay, me and Patricia debate this all the time on Aaron and Patricia on our podcast, and where we argue like an old married couple, even though we're yet to be a married couple. And that is,
But we are old, though. We are old.
Well, okay, all right. But we argue that I dislike the episodic format of like Molly McGee and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and that I've always been a proponent of the story-driven season, and the fact because the reason why is because look at what we've had with the Owl House, look at what we've had with Amphibia, and look at what we've had with Gravity Falls. It makes you want to tune in to the next episode, and it grips you, and everyone starts talking about it on social media, starts coming up with a theory, start coming up with a conversation. It is a really great way to get your show some excitement. But
Yeah.
Patricia sometimes disagrees with me and says that with the episodic format, it's easier for kids to understand because they don't have to watch like every single episode of the show to get the show. I'd like to hear everybody else's thoughts on that. Like, which one of us is right?
Let me jump in here. Let me be devil's advocate. Okay,
Go
It
for
was
it.
like my
I'm
time
here,
is
I'm
come.
here. All right. I get a lot of hate. I get a lot of flack because, of course, I am just as mad at everybody else with Disney, everything like that. But at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind they are a business. They need to make money. And what makes you money? Throwing on random episodes. Don't care what it is. People can pick it up right away, watch it, you're done. You don't need to go seek out another episode to understand, like, oh, like, who is this character that they just introduced into the story? You don't need to air the 3 episodes back to back to understand it. And I think to the benefit, that is why Cartoon Network loves Teen Titans Go so much. You can throw it on for a weekend. You can throw it on for a week straight. However many episodes you want, back to back to back to back. It's there. You just pump it out. It doesn't matter. And for a business, that works so well because that child that is watching it, probably without their parents even noticing what is going on, is watching the 8 episodes back to back of Teen Titans Go of Robin just shaking his little booty around. And it's like, that's funny. That's awesome. Good for us. It doesn't matter at all. And so while I love these story-driven shows, I think they're amazing. Avatar: Last Airbender did an incredible job of really cementing that in and kind of allowing this break of the medium from like other shows during that time in the animated format. But for Disney, it is so much easier just to toss on a random episode. That's why they loved Phineas and Ferb so much. It's probably why they're bringing it back again. Is just having kids sit down, mindlessly watch an episode. You can put on anyone, doesn't matter. You can just hit that play button on Disney Plus and just go. Your child doesn't need to think. It is mindless television, and that's what it is there for. And that is the format that Disney as a company doesn't want to break from. It's so simple. So while I personally really love story-driven shows, and I think that they very much underestimate their audience and their level of comprehension and who the shows are actually reaching out and touching in these fan base that will, seek out merch anywhere they can, gobble it up. They just don't understand that market yet. And for Disney, I hate to give them any credit where it is, but if you kind of look back to Alex, the creator of Gravity Falls, had put out a really funny, I shouldn't say it's funny, but a good video about the censorship that Gravity Falls had to go through in these ridiculous places. And I won't say much about it for spoiler reasons.
I've seen the post.
But I feel like Disney has come a long way, and I give them some credit because in business, things move very, very slowly. You are changing and adapting. You have an older generation who's in control of it, coming in with a newer generation. There is so much gap between there, and you are trying to abide by your stockholders and what they want. And again, devil's advocate, it's very difficult to find that median line there, to find what is okay to show, what is not okay to show, what goes against regulations and what they can work through. And really simplistic, just toss an episode up. It's fine. We don't need to worry about a story. It's just so much easier for their business. And it's more cost effective to toss up a random episode of a character just jumping around doing wacky shenanigans than push out 5 episodes where they need these super detailed, crisp fighting things that just require a higher budget.
Anybody else want to be able to go into my side?
Yeah, well, I was so getting everything until you mentioned Disney Plus, and I'm like, I think that's where the fatal flaw kind of is here, is syndication on cable, 100%. Nonsense to have on in the background, yes, but like you said, there's a whole market that's untapped, and I think it goes younger than a lot of studios will give credit to while they're trying to figure out this shift in entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember abandoning Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, and Cartoon Network in favor for, any VHS or DVD I could get a hold of, Star Wars, even Jurassic Park. Like, I was just clamoring for whatever movies my parents had, because I started craving enriching stories. Like, I remember even getting tired with my video games because I'm like, is Link ever gonna talk? Is there a point to all these games? Why is he over here? Why is he over there? Why is his clothes always green? Like, I started asking questions of all my stories. And I think in a world of streaming, I want to believe at some point shit will be gotten together. But it's like, when you have the opportunity to control it, pause, play, binge it, I think that's where you get these kind of shows. And it kind of sucks because I feel like the Owl House would still do incredible things if it was a Disney Plus original, but there's still something so special about Rain and Lumity and the Owl Curse and all these different themes and characters being presented on cable. I think there is something to be said about that control and that linearity, because there's also going to be kids who are like, cool, a story, but after about 45, 50 minutes, they're going to go, oh, I want a grilled cheese. They're kids, right? So it's like a world where you can control that. And then, yes, shows like Teen Titans Go, the syndication power, absolutely. But I think we're starting to move away from that, or more, not move away from it, but make room for a world of both. I see a world where Disney Channel, if they keep clamoring to the archaic cable access setup, I feel like Disney Channel is eventually going to become the Disney Plus channel, where it's just, okay, here's things from Disney Plus that we'll show you on TV, but we control what it is, what time. You should pay money if you want to watch WandaVision before 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think the world of entertainment is in such a weird flux, and Disney can't keep up. I think Disney Plus ironically came out at the best time because it was starting to happen right as all of us had to go inside to be safe and smart. But I think they're still trying to pioneer an unpioneerable space right now.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that Molly Knox Ostertag, who you guys may know is Nate Stevenson's wife, and also who is a crucial writer for a lot of the episodes that a lot of people love from the Owl House, like Enchanting Gromfright and various others. But yeah, if she is going to be the one to pitch a new series on Disney Plus, and it's going to be like story driven and all that kind of stuff, we could be seeing all that stuff over there, and Disney Channel will probably be relegated over toward the episodic stuff because we need to be able to get that viewership and not have to worry about like, oh, I missed that episode of Tron Uprising when Pavel was able to take control of Rebecca, and we need to find out if Tron is going to be able to come and fight off into the grid. So yeah, we're at this point in time, it's like story stuff, especially for younger kids, is not going to be the one to gravitate towards them, because I mean, I even mentioned this in my Hey Arnold the Jungle movie video that kids who never saw Hey Arnold and they jump into the Jungle movie will have no idea what's happening, and they have to watch these episodes to get themselves prepared. I mean, for a lot of kids, it's like, that's homework. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to watch this stuff easily. That's why Enter the Florpus and Static Cling were better successes, because it was easier for them to get into, that they didn't really need to watch it in order for them to understand what the story was. And I think that we're probably going to see that direction at this point in time. It's actually something that I remember. I was listening back to like our old season discussions of the Owl House, and there's something that Rebecca even brought up where she said that Owl House came out at the right time, because for a lot of people who were sad that Steven Universe Future was ending, they needed something else to get into. And so now that the Owl House is ending, I'm sure that there'll probably be like some show down the line that a lot of people will get into. I mean, like, I've been seeing a lot of people looking into like all the independent stuff that's been on YouTube, like Has Been Hotel and The Hell of a Boss and Laxadaisy. So you know what? I think that there's still stuff out there that we can be able to gravitate towards. I mean, just because that we're moving on doesn't mean that we can't forget about what the show is able to do for all of us, whether it be representation or a storyline or a character or anything of the sort. I think that what we were able to experience those 3 years watching the show is something that we're never going to forget. I mean,
but this is the point I'm making. Like, we're moving on, which Disney, I would imagine, doesn't want us to do. They want us to stay, pay our money for the Disney Plus, and continue, watching their content. Which, I've listened to Owl House fans who have basically told me flat out to say, okay, once we're done with the Owl House, and if we're pretty certain that there's not going to be any more of that, I'm canceling my Disney Plus subscription, and I'm not going to move any further with them. And this is a problem. And by the way, in regards to like all the kids content, I mean, we're sort of kind of moving away a little bit from here, but here's the thing about this. Do you know in Japan right now, their birth rate has fallen under 800,000 a year? Now, that is concerning. And by the way, this isn't just Japan. This is a trend that we're noticing going on through other countries, that their birth rates are currently going through the floor. Now, if Disney believes that they're going to be able to make a business model, or at least a successful business model, out of a bunch of us, like, Zamber just said herself, she's not got any kids. Neither have I, neither have Patricia, neither is Morgan, neither is Moscow, neither is the third Bill, and neither, I'm assuming James hasn't got any kids either.
No.
So yeah. So I'm not saying that I can safely say that we're not the exception. There's a lot of other people right now who, for financial reasons or for other reasons, that I think should be alarm bells. That should be ringing. But anyway, that's a debate for something else. But what I'm saying is, in context of that, if the Disney believes that they're going to be making money, or any serious bank that they've been making, over the last good couple of decades, away from the baby boomers all the way up to now, and think they're going to be making the same cash that they're going to be making child content, which is based around the architecture that we recently discovered, they're going to be found out. They're going to be very seriously wrong. There's a reason why Illumination is doing things like the Mario movie. There's a reason why Universal is doing things like the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. There's a reason why other ones are doing things that reminisce to the last days that all of us have been growing up with, and then going into this is because there's people who grew up with it, and they're the ones who are watching. And not the one. Maybe the kids are just being brought along for the ride because their parents watched it been yesteryear. So I think that's just another reason why I think Disney are in trouble. I think unless they do something, which I think, when they realize that Phineas and Ferb hasn't been the success that they hope it was going to be, and all the other shows are kind of like falling by the wayside, and everyone's going off to Netflix or going off to, the YouTube, or going off to all the independent, studios, or going, not bothering to pay streaming for it all, and will happily pay, $30 or whatever to like sit in a recliner with like, a plate of nachos to watch the Kirby movie or the Star Fox movie or the Metroid movie or whatever it's going to be. Well, they're going to be that's going to be a massive wake up call for Disney. And I think Dana Terrace, all he needs to do is just needs to sit like on a beach in Miami and just wait for a cell phone to ring. I think, and then I think that's what she's effectively doing, in my opinion.
We'll just have to wait and see.
It's been really interesting for me, actually, because I've worked for a big TV company here in the UK for the last 12 years, and watching the difference, like my company knows that live television is going to become a dinosaur very quickly, a lot quicker than I think we're expecting. And actually, a lot of channels are already, the viewership, the numbers that I've been seeing over the last few years just plummeting on live TV. Eventually, a lot of your programs, it's going to be like your shops now, your shops are shutting because online shopping's becoming a thing, and it is going to be the same, I think, for the live television, where a lot of live TV channels are going to start shutting down, and online is going to be where the priority goes. And I think Disney did the right thing bringing out Disney Plus, and I think they need to be prepared to ready to make that leap fully onto some sort of platform like that, whether it be that they host their own little live channels on the app as well at the same time. So if you do have kids and you do want to just plunk them down in front of the TV, you can do something like that. But I just come back to the discussion that was had. I see the benefit in both types of content, but I do think they will need to make they're holding on to this little raft that's going out, and they're just trying to hold on to the shore at the same time, and there's going to come a point they're going to have to make the choice between what they're going to go after, and it'll be interesting to see the results on the back of it.
Yeah. I think that we can start wrapping things up, because I know that we can probably go into this for hours upon hours. But yeah, I think that I want to leave off with like maybe just finality. Like I want to know about what have been your favorite episodes, who have been your favorite characters, and what the show left behind for you as you when watching it. Like what impact did it leave
before we
behind?
do that, there are a couple extra like little nitbits I want to like throw into the Owl House discussion.
Go ahead.
That is that we saw that Camila was looking after 6 kids, and I was wondering like how on earth did she manage to do? I mean, as you can see, like she's budgeting for everything, collecting coupons left, right, and center, and everything like that. But she seems to have quite a bit of bank in order to kind of like do this, and it leads me to this very sad theory. I believe that Manny in that hospital did not die of natural causes. And I think that he might have actually died from, malpractice in the hospital. And the one thing I'm thinking of is that once that happened, you probably imagine the hospital is going to think, good grief, Camila's going to take us to the cleaners. We've done something really terribly wrong. Let's give her a ton of money and let's get her to sign an NDA or whatever, and never to take us to court or anything like that. And that's the reason why for those couple of months she was able to basically help all those kids out. Effectively, I don't know. Like, I get the feeling that maybe, who knows? Maybe if the Owl House does come back, maybe we probably might explore a bit more about who Manny was and what happened. But I don't know. That sort of hangs with me a little bit. That the way that Manny went out probably wasn't the most kosher of ways for whatever reason.
Let me throw it out. Probably just life insurance money.
Yeah, that's
honestly,
what I was gonna say.
workplace injury or something like that. Maybe I hate to jump to like a hospital malpractice, and maybe this is just life insurance.
I don't know.
Life insurance, that stuff.
That would probably say
Also,
life insurance.
I think there's also an implication this house isn't as pretty as the last house, because that was Camila's oh, we're moving because this house is prettier. I think also their family probably had a bit more means combined and then downsized a lot. So now you also have a cheaper home per the location or where it is in proximity to the hospital. But yeah, I think life insurance before.
As someone from Connecticut, a house like that goes for $300,000.
Whew, there you go.
Oh,
Yeah, the property up here ain't cheap. So
wait,
yeah,
Morgan, yes, that is.
well, not for a little.
Morgan lives in a mansion, so
I also grew up on the West Coast, so
Listen,
it's
don't
not
pull this shit right now.
$900,000. I'm sorry. I think from my experience on the other side of the country, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Well, if you compare it to down south, South Carolina and Georgia, you could get a huge house for that. But in Connecticut, like even you know what, maybe 300. I was thinking of one story, but technically it is 2 stories, so it maybe go for like 400, 500,000.
Yeah.
Because we didn't see much of the upstairs.
It's 2-bedroom, isn't it? Because the kids were sleeping in basements, 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
Well, the other reason I come up with like the malpractice theory is because Camila blames herself for like what happened, and like because she makes the comment like I it was my decision to like bring us over to Greyfields and put him into that fancy hospital, and we all know how that turned out, and it makes me feel like that's another thing that kind of pushes me towards that as well, but.
Right now.
I mean, I don't know how, like, if someone dies, how that works, like, in regards to like life insurance and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know how
life
all that
insurance,
functions.
pension depends on his job too. Like, if he had a specific like state or government job, there's a whole lot of benefits there. If he was a veteran or not. I've had to unfortunately help fill out and find a lot of paperwork on that in my life.
All right.
I kind of took her wording there as more so like, I wish I didn't move us because it disrupted your life and it didn't pan out, that we moved to be able to get him to a hospital that could help him. For a lot of families in those situations where it is a unfortunate disease, the doctors available in their area can't handle it. So a lot of people end up moving out to a different state, country, what have you, to get access to that healthcare. And that's kind of what I thought she was implying. Like, it didn't even matter in the end. Because
the thing, we don't actually know what he actually died of. Like, right now it's just right now he just died of the off-camera disease. We don't know what that is.
Well, plus, I think it also grounds and solidifies a realistic Luce was pretty isolated if she had like not grown up in the area, right? Like, they'd been there for a little while, sure, but like these weren't kids she grew up around. This is a new community. Camila doesn't have like friends from when she prior to getting married or like prior to Manny getting sick. So I think it also illustrates.
I get the feeling if season 3 wasn't shortened, I think we would have got a Manny episode. I think, and we would have got like had like Luz and all the finally goes visits her dad's grave, and like all the team come with her, and they would have had like stories and like memories and things like that, and like in the graveyard, and I think we would have got like another crying episode of like which another episode we all would have cried over.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry to interrupt, but I gotta head out.
All right. Okay. Well, Jim,
I was literally about to type the same thing into the chat as well. I have to go too.
I just have to pee.
All right. I think we should really wrap up.
I think we should wrap up. Yeah.
So I guess we will cut this short. So you'll have to wait another 20 years for us to gather together to discuss about all this stuff. But no, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on by. I really do appreciate it.
It was great being here. You guys all have a good time.
All right. So quickly plug and promote your stuff right before you have to go.
My name is Arun Mehta of the Arun Mehta Show podcast. I talk about Preston North End stuff, as you can see behind me. I also talk about some Hey Arnold stuff as well, and also I just talk generally about news and entertainment and politics. You find me on Twitter. It's Arun Mehta Show, which is ARUNMEHTA SHOW. If you want to ask me a question on Tumblr, it's arunmehta.tumblr.com. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm back there too. Also, Arun Mehta Show. If you want to find me on Reddit, I'm also there on the same time as Arun Mehta Show. And and also keep an eye on the Arun Mehta Show Twitter feed. The Arun Mehta Show will come back at some point. My computer is finally rebuilt, and I'm finally cooking on gas again. So I'll let you guys know what's going to happen in the future. Thank you.
Okay. I post videos of my magic and mind reading performances on my YouTube channel. You can find that at Jim Bevan, and I also post them on Instagram, jbevan1985. I just posted my most recent video, which was me doing opening acts before a performance by the Cutthroat Freak Show, and I'm hoping to keep the videos coming up throughout the year.
Okay. Okay, everybody, go for it.
Morgan.
Oh, me? Okay. I was waiting for someone else. I didn't want to cut off anyone. All right. So if you want to follow me, you can check out my YouTube. It's Morgan Terry. Very creative, I know. And then on Twitter and Instagram, I go by DoodlebugMorg. I post like, art I've done of these fandoms, or I'm just crying over something online. It could go either way. And then on TikTok, I post random crap. That's Oxymorgan, like oxymoron, but Oxymorgan. So yeah, those are my socials.
All right, and Zamber?
Thank you guys for having me. You can find me everywhere at IAmZamber, mainly just on YouTube though, so.
All right. And you, Bill?
Yeah, youtube.com/thethirdbill. Social medias generally it's just at thethirdbill. And I stream on my YouTube channel, Bill Chill Gaming. But all my animation and reviews and pop culture stuff and music, that's all on The Third Bill.
Okay, and you, Moscow.
Yeah, so I go by WeeLassReacts on YouTube, and same thing on Twitter as well, and I just react to, as I say it, shite on the internet.
All right, and as for me, you can check me out on oldschoollane.net. I have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/oldschoollane, facebook.com/oldschoollane. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. You can find the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, all those places. New episodes of the podcast will go there first, and then it'll go up in a few days on YouTube. As of the recording of this is episode 199 of my podcast. Episode 200 will be coming out next week, and it's basically a celebration of all the podcasts and all the guests that I've had on there over the past 10 years. So it's really exciting to see how far that the show has come and where hopefully it'll be in the future. And and I'm sure that if you know that last topic we said about like favorite episodes and characters and all that stuff, I'm sure that they'll probably do a separate discussion. So follow their stuff if you want to know. So yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on the season 3 Owl House specials. Let us know about your favorite moments and all that stuff.
I'm
yeah,
muted.
what's up?
Oh, am I not muted?
No, you're not.
Oh, damn, I was trying to be so slick and
That
polite.
was me last time.
Damn it. No, my partner just got home, so I was like, I
All
muted
right,
the mic,
all right.
run.
Okay, so you know what? You already know my stuff. Link below. Okay, everybody, bye.
Bye.
Bye.